post-pandemic. And therefore, I thought it important to indicate some of the activities, despite the fact that in September 2021, I provided an update specifically on the national broadband and, of course, the expansion of the public Wi-Fi hotspots. And I did promise to return in early 2022, the new year, with a status report to this House on those and other activities. Today I will provide updates on the following: Ministry's legislative agenda, the generation procurement entity, in particular the procurement of electricity, the national broadband, the establishment of the government electrical regulator, and the Joint Petroleum Working Group. Madam Speaker, currently the Ministry has prioritized 10 pieces of legislation as follows: Petroleum Downstream Activities Bill. This bill is to make provision for the regulation of petroleum downstream activities and for connected matters, and to repeal provisions in the Petroleum Quality Control Act and the Petroleum Oil Fuel Landing and Storage Act. The draft of this bill was received from the OPC on July 27, 2021. It is currently under the review by the Ministry, and completion of further drafting instructions is targeted for February 28, 2022. The Petroleum Amendment Bill. This bill is intended to replace the Petroleum Act to improve the development and management of petroleum resources. Further drafting instructions were returned to the OPC on November 29, 2021, and further instructions are anticipated to be issued by February 9, 2022 from the OPC. Electricity Amendment, Indemnification and Validation Bill. Ministry embarked on proposed amendments to the Electricity Act to make provisions for the validation and indemnification of individuals in respect of activities related to the Board of Examiners and officers of the Government Electrical Inspectorate. In light of the current review of the Electricity Act 2015 by a Joint Select Committee of Parliament, the validation and indemnification of individuals in respect of activities related to the Board of Examiners and officers of the Government Electrical Inspectorate will proceed without inclusion of substantive provisions proposed for amendments. The electricity net billing regulations. These regulations seek to provide the mechanism for self-generators to sell or otherwise be credited with the value of or for excess power generated to the electricity grid. Latest draft regulations received from the OPC on January 6, 2022 are being reviewed by the Ministry. Electric power wheeling regulations. The regulations seek to implement a regime to provide greater specificity to those provisions of the Electrical Act allowing for self-generators to generate electricity in one location and to utilize the equivalent amount in other locations. Again, the Ministry is reviewing the draft regulations with a view to returning further drafting instructions to the OPC in pursuance of the target for submitting to affirmative resolution by the end of March 2022, again in this financial year. Madam Speaker, Electricity Amendment Bill. The bill is, as originally conceptualized, is to augment the current provisions in the Electricity Act. 1, establishing the generation procurement entity by specifying its functions and its constitution and procedures for operations. And 2, validation and indemnification of action of generation procurement entity. The bill will advance the provisions making for the validation and indemnification of actions of members of the generation procurement entity. The substantive amendments contemplated in the bill will await the current deliberations of the Joint Select Committee. The Law Reform Amendment of Penalty Bill. This bill is intended to increase monetary penalties and custodial sentences in legislation under the portfolio of the Ministry, which are outdated. drafting instructions were issued to the OPC on October 19, 2021. Anticipated date of receipt of the first draft of the bill from the OPC is February 10, 2022, again in this financial year. The data protection regulations, this one is critical as well, Madam Speaker. This Honourable House may recall that the Data Protection Act was passed on July 10, 2020. The Act empowers the Minister to make regulations for the purpose of giving effect to the provisions. Same, additionally, the DPA provides specific areas which require prescription by notices and orders either by the Minister or the Commissioner. MTEC has undertaken a preliminary assessment of the Act to identify the notices, orders, regulations that are critical to the initial operationalization of the Act, and sought the assistance of the International Telecommunications Union to engage a consultant to assist with the preparation of drafting instructions to inform the drafting of the relevant notices, orders, and regulations. In this regard, preliminary drafting instructions were received from the consultant and is now being reviewed by the Ministry and the Information Commissioner with a view to finalizing those instructions by the end of this financial year. Rules under the Telecommunications Act. These regulations will provide a modern regulatory framework that provides a basis for sharing of ICT infrastructure. With respect to the Telecommunications Act, this House is advised that the Office of Utilities Regulation, OUR, with the support of the Ministry, is developing rules to address quality of service standards. That, Madam Speaker, is critical based on the fact that as it stands now, there is no minimum service standards being offered by or the telecom companies being held to account for. The infrastructure sharing and the resolution of the interconnection disputes. Madam Speaker, again, draft rules have been prepared by the OPC, by the CPC on all of these areas. Quality of service standards pursuant to Section 44 of the Telecommunications Act. The OUR is empowered to make the rules regarding quality of service standards and resolution of customer complaints. The rules will prescribe minimum targets to be achieved and maintained by telecommunication licenses in respect of various technical and customer service quality parameters, and will mandate the periodic measurement and reporting of these parameters by the licensees. The rules will also specify the principles governing the monitoring, verification, and publication of the measurements by the OUR, and will outline the required content for licenses, complaints handling procedures. The third draft of the rules have been received from the CPC, and further drafting instructions are to be issued by the end of this month. And the infrastructure sharing rules, Section 29A of the Telecommunications Act, enables the OUR to promulgate rules mandating infrastructure sharing. Under the Act, infrastructure sharing is defined as a provision to licensees to access to tangibles used in connection with a public network or intangibles facilitating the utilization of a public network. The second draft of these rules have been issued by the CPC and are now under review. Madam Speaker, last but not least, the resolution of the interconnection disputes rules. The OUR is empowered to resolve the pre- and post-contract interconnection disputes between telecommunications operators under Section 29 and 34 of the Telecommunications Act. The rules are set out to get the OUR's general approach to the resolution of interconnection disputes in the telecommunications sector, prescribe the form and manner in which the pre- and post-contract disputes should be referred to the OUR, and detail the process that the OUR will adopt in handling of the disputes placed before it. Madam Speaker, the generation procurement entity has been given the mandate to undertake the procurement of new electricity generation capacity. The procurement of new investments in the energy sector to be carried out by the GPE will be based on the approved integrated resource plan, which is a comprehensive decision-making tool and roadmap for meeting Jamaica's 20-year electricity grid obligations. In light of this mandate, Madam Speaker, the GPE is an advanced stage with the IDB for technical assistance to develop draft rules and protocols for the acquisition of new generation capacity, specifically renewable energy. In my sectoral presentation in May 2021, I indicated to the public that they could expect the request for proposals within 6 months. We have experienced some delays, but it is anticipated that requests for proposals will be in place by the second quarter of 2022-2023 fiscal year. And, Madam Speaker, this will allow for all of these companies who have been writing to the ministry with unsolicited proposals, which we have not been able to take any further until such time as the GPE had concluded its work. So this will be a big day for the renewable energy in Jamaica when we actually have an RFP that goes out. Madam Speaker, this Honourable House will recall in my presentation in September 21, I spoke of the various initiatives being undertaken to achieve our goal of becoming fully digital by 2030. At that time, I outlined that the Ministry was working with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information and the National Works Agency in an effort to expand the government's broadband footprint with the intention to connect over 900 educational institutions to the government network through a tiered system, thus facilitating access to faster internet speeds for teachers and students in schools. The Government of Jamaica has been in negotiation with the Jamaica Public Service with respect to the manner in which it can offer support to the National Broadband Initiative. I'm pleased, Madam Speaker, to announce that JPS has agreed to support the initiative by offering the use of its utility poles for the running of aerial fiber. This permission, Madam Speaker. This permission was received last week, and already JPS and the NWA are in discussions regarding the manner in which the works will be executed. Tenders have also been issued for contractors to erect these cables in the parishes of St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, and Westmoreland. While the tender process for the some contractors are complete, the responses to the other tenders are currently being evaluated with a view to completing the tender process in short order. Madam Speaker, I'm also pleased to advise this Honourable House of discussions which are currently underway with Flow Jamaica to provide free access to 2 dark fibre strands on the north coast to supply end-to-end access. The St. James Municipal Corporation, St. Anne Municipal Corporation, or should I say from St. James to St. Anne to St. Mary to Portland, and Portland to St. Thomas. Madam Speaker, Flow has remained consistent in its support of the execution of the National Broadband Initiative and therefore optimistic that the outcome of these negotiations will be quite favourable in short order. I think we have the... Madam Speaker, in my September 2021 presentation, I outlined my intention to increase the number of public Wi-Fi hotspots by 7 additional sites. These sites are at varying stages of implementation, and I'm pleased to report that we're on track to meet this target, and Jamaica will have a total of 20 public Wi-Fi hotspots across the country by March 31st, 2021. Madam Speaker, just checking if they got the...
No, we have not, but I've just been reliably informed that they are being brought down by Mr. You have it? On. The soft copy is on thing, but we are getting a hard copy as well.
Sorry for the delay, and apologies to my opposition counterparts. Madam Speaker, while this was not in my presentation in September 2021, we have completed 7 new community access points across the island. This Honourable House will also recall that during my sectoral presentation in May last year, I gave a commitment to fully operationalize the government electrical regulator at the end of a 3-month transition period, which began on April 21st, 2021. We experienced some delays, mainly with the completion of the development of the online portal through which customers, electricians, and private inspectors are required to conduct business based on the legislative and regulatory frameworks that have been passed by this House. A new deadline of November 1st was set, and I'm happy to report that the GER became operational effective November 1st, 2021. The GER is mandated to regulate electrical installation and inspection processes, register electricians, enroll technical electrical assistants, license private electrical inspectors, and ensure safe electrical installations throughout the island. The establishment of the GER paved the way for the closure of the Government Electrical Inspectorate on December 31st, 2021. The GEI has completed 5,065 inspections between October 15, 21, when the entity ceased accepting applications, to December 31, 2021. I'm aware, Madam Speaker, that there still are some teething pains, and we are actively addressing them and encourage those who are affected to be in touch with us at the ministry. Madam Speaker, let me say once more about the GER. One of the benefits of the new system is the ongoing examinations for electricians. Examinations are held quarterly, with the most recent one being held on January 19th and 20th, 2022, which was done both in written and practical formats. I turn, Madam Speaker, quickly to the Joint Petroleum Working Group. Madam Speaker, while this was not a part of my September 2021 presentation, I'd like to provide an update on the work being done by the Joint Petroleum Working Group. Since 2013, Madam Speaker, wage negotiations between the Petroleum Tanker Drivers Association and the Petroleum Haulage Contractors Association have been stymied due to the dissolution of the PHAC, which is the Petroleum Haulage Contractors Association. This association was responsible for ensuring equitable haulage pricing mechanisms, ensuring the capacity for transport across the island, and supervising petroleum loss reductions effort. On October 14, 2021, I established a Joint Petroleum Working Group and appointed Mr. Wayne Chen, Chairman of Petrojam, as the chairman. This group is comprised of representatives from the marketing companies, haulage contractors, tanker drivers, UK's Ministry of Finance and Public Service, Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Ministry of Transport and Mining, MSET, the Fair Trading Commission, the Gasoline Retailers Association, and the Jamaica Association of Petroleum Marketers and Petrojam. This group was mandated to finalize recommendations for a minimum economic rate and related improvements to the employment conditions of petroleum tanker drivers. Madam Speaker, the Joint Petroleum Working Group agreed on a minimum economic rate of $1,000 per hour based on the industry norms in relation to hazardous materials and risk factors. This represents a 270% increase in relation to the lowest rate paid to tanker drivers, which equated to about $370 per hour, or the equivalent of $14,640 for a 40-hour work week. Totally unacceptable, Madam Speaker and members. The agreed haulage contractor and tanker driver rates, which were translated from hourly rates to a per trip basis to take into consideration distance covered and volumes transported, are as follows. The rates are in 4 categories: round town 0 to 19 miles, near central 20 to 39 miles, central 40 to 79 miles, and western 80 miles and above. The haulage rates in Jamaican dollars per litre is the basis for the rates. And for the round town 0 to 19 miles is $1.20, Near Central 20 to 39 is $2. Central 40 to 79, $2.50, and Western 80 miles and above, $4. And the new tanker driver per liter, the new tanker driver rates is 20 cents for 0 to 19 miles, 32 cents for 20 to 39 miles, 39 cents 40 to 79 miles, and 62 cents for 80 miles and above. These rates were derived competitively, and they do not include general consumption tax. So, Madam Speaker, I think that this is a big step in relation to some equity as it relates to the tanker drivers and haulage contractors. Madam Speaker, my last presentation advised this Honourable House of the foundational work taking place to ensure a thriving electromobility environment and the establishment of the Electric Vehicle Council and the drafting of e-mobility strategic framework. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report that a Cabinet submission has been drafted seeking approval of the strategic framework that was developed after extensive consultations with stakeholders, and the submission was forwarded to the former Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment and Climate Change, Transport and Mining, the Attorney General's Department, Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, seeking their comments and recommendations. Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has developed a Cabinet submission to seek approval for the fiscal framework policy to govern electric vehicles in Jamaica. This submission was also subject to consultation. Madam Speaker, following the sharing of this submission, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has sought the assistance of the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology and the Inter-American Development Bank in resolving issues regarding cost-benefit analysis specifically related to fuel. Madam Speaker, MSET and the IDB met on Monday, December 13, 2021, where the IDB agreed to provide the assistance required. The recommendation for the analysis has been withdrawn. The recommendation for the analysis has been withdrawn, and the Ministry of Finance and Public Service can proceed with the Cabinet submission. It is expected, Madam Speaker, that the matter will go to Cabinet in short order, meaning in the upcoming weeks. And, Madam Speaker, let me just say that we are still on track to try and have the implementation of our e-mobility policy by April of this year, which would signal the new fiscal year. In closing, Madam Speaker, this Honourable House will recall that in 2020-2021 sectoral presentations made by my predecessor, the Honourable Favour Williams, on the modernisation of the portfolios across the ministry, particularly in energy and technology portfolios. New institutional arrangements were effected, including the closure of NESOL, National Energy Solutions Limited, the PCJ, Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, Government Electrical Inspectorate, and Petrojam Ethanol Limited, all of which were closed and are in the winding up process. Madam Speaker, there is also advanced activities to effect institutional changes to the Jamaica aircraft refueling services, as Cabinet gave approval for the cessation of the joint venture with British Petroleum. The science portfolio is also being reviewed. In tandem with the transformation agenda, it is a priority of the strengthening of governance across the ministry's portfolio. I do not need, Madam Speaker, to rehash the problems that have plagued the ministry over the past decades, but as I said in my statement at the appointment of new boards in December 2020, transparency and trust must guide our actions. It is this commitment to those principles that we have assembled the best and brightest minds to give quality oversight to all public bodies under this ministry. In keeping with this priority, I turn my attention in closing to the Post and Telecommunications Department and its operations. The accounting officer of the ministry has invited key entities within the country's anti-corruption framework to conduct investigations on some aspect of the operationals of the PTD, Post and Telegraph Department, and to subject the entity to an audit. I will await the outcome of the audit to satisfy myself on the state of compliance with good governance as far as this entity is concerned. Madam Speaker, in concluding, I want to assure the House that this ministry will continue to work towards building a brighter future for all Jamaicans despite the challenges of the pandemic. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for a comprehensive presentation, and if I were cynical, and if it were some weeks before his reinstatement in the Cabinet, I would have questioned motives, but his motives cannot be questioned today because he's firmly back in the Cabinet. But you know, Madam Speaker, I thought it strange that as we are approaching budget and sectoral budget, the Minister would do such an elaborate presentation. But we thank him for it because he has raised some important issues that we have been discussing for some time. And I would just want to respond briefly. As you know, Madam Speaker, I deal with the energy side. My colleague who deals with the IT is not here, but the spokesman on finance will deal with the IT side. So we are claiming equal time for response. The Minister having breached his standing orders already.
I have taken notice, and since indeed this is an area that is very critical to all of us as Jamaicans, I purposely allowed him, and I will allow the opposition to do the same. Go ahead.
But did you get the permission?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, because of the nature of the presentation, I have to also query some of the issues that were not mentioned. Quite a lot were mentioned, but there are a few that I would just want to remind the Minister as we move forward, for example, to deal with our electricity situation. The fact of the matter is that we are witnessing a tremendous increase in the price of electricity, and some of the benefits that we anticipated as we transform the energy sector to new fuels, we are not seeing them, and so questions are going to continue to be raised as to why not. And one of the outstanding things is the draft regulations that we left there in 2016 in relation to the sale and distribution of LNG in Jamaica. There needs to be an appropriate regime because the intention, Madam Speaker, was for this to be a competitive element of the energy landscape. And so far, because we don't have regulations, people are not going to enter a marketplace such as this. So I would like to ask the Minister if he can give an update on that. And the Minister quite rightly alluded to the Electricity Act, which is now going through a review. And it's not my intention to comment on that because the work is ongoing. But there is an important aspect of it, Madam Speaker, that we need to take note of. The current license for JPSCO expires in 2027. However, there are some issues, fundamental issues that require early clarification and update. One that my colleague, the leader of opposition business, is quite concerned about is the ability of persons, businesses that are engaged in the special economic zone, whether or not, as was my contention, they ought to be free from establishing not only their own private electricity system, but to be able to distribute within that framework the energy, the electricity that is generated from their established network. The GPE, Madam Speaker, I am very disappointed, as the Minister knows, because it has taken far too long to get us to another phase of procurement, especially for renewables. The last time this country went to procure for renewables was 2013. Out of that procurement, we now have Wigton Wind Farm 3, we have the Blue Mountain wind energy system, and we have content solar plant in Clarendon. We haven't had a procurement for renewables since then, and it has to do with the slow pace of getting these things done. And of course, the ministry was involved in a period of dysfunctionality because of some of the things that were unearthed. So Minister, you have already slipped by 6 months the timeline for the implementation of the integrated resource plan. And it is our hope that when you speak in the sectoral debate, you'll be able to give us a definitive time as to when the procurement will start for new, especially renewable energy. Similarly, Madam Speaker, I would like to comment on the regulations that are now unfolding in relation to both net billing and wheeling. The truth of the matter is that we have been proceeding to issue licenses for net billing. In fact, before I left, we had gone over 200, I think close to 400 licenses. So the lack of regulations did not stop us from moving. And again, I would urge the Minister that in relation to both net billing and wheeling, we don't continue this long pause, but we resume because the current law does provide for licenses to be issued. You don't have to have all the regulations in place. You don't have to have perfection before you can implement some of these meaningful measures that will see an improvement in the energy system in Jamaica. Just two more issues I would like to raise. The Minister has now, and we say thankfully, established the government electricity regulator. Again, it's been too long in coming from 2015, but we are pleased that it is now finally up and running. And in relation to the matter of the PCJ, Minister, probably you can update us. You did mention in the statement that these bodies are now terminated. I still have a question because I'm still understanding that redundancy payments have not been made to some of the staff members of the former PCJ. So if you can clarify that. And Minister, you know I was going to ask you about Petrojam. Petrojam has been in the news in a negative way for some years now. There was a committee appointed by the Prime Minister to review the operations of Petrojam and to make certain recommendations. Those recommendations were made 2-3 years ago. Minister, it is important that the country be told now where is the government going with Petrojam. Every week we do anticipate the price announcements. I do understand the matrix. Well, it's more in the form of increases these days. But Madam Speaker, it is important for the country to be told whether or not Petrojam's operations, that is, as a refinery, is going to be continued, or whether or not the recommendation for the closure, really, of the refinery is going to be acted upon. I still believe that that matter is so far-reaching and fundamental that that should really be debated right here in this Parliament. And finally, the Minister adverted to the issue of good governance. One of the things that I recall doing in 2012 when I became Minister for Energy again was to organize a special session with all the boards, all the agencies, to meet with the then Contractor General's office, to go through and understand from that office the issues affecting good governance. I would like to recommend to the Minister, as he enters on to this, this new financial year, probably the Integrity Commission might be willing to organize seminars with your heads of departments, with your agencies, with your boards, on issues relating to good governance, issues relating to procurement, and so on and so forth. I would like to strongly recommend that, Minister, as I see that you are preoccupied and concerned, as we all are, with ensuring that we don't go back, we don't go over those past issues affecting many of the agencies in this ministry. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Just one question. Yeah. Just, Madam Speaker, just to follow up on my colleagues on the energy side, just one question from me, which is the GPE, the Generation Procurement Entity. Would the scope of that apply just to the public, well, it is in respect to the integrated resource planning, but would that cover private generation capacity, for example, within the special economic zone regime that was being asked previously? Would that apply to the special economic zone regime? Or it's just in the domestic, the Jamaican domestic and the grid tied arrangement?
Madam Speaker, at the moment I don't think it does, member, but I will check to see exactly that question that you asked. Member Paul, well, thanks for your comments. A lot of what you have asked me will be addressed in the sectoral, as it is not at the stage where it has been completed. As it relates to the Petrojam, that report, that Zaka report, was tabled at Parliament, at Cabinet, sorry, and of course some instructions were given, which the Ministry is still reviewing to go back to Cabinet in due course. So I'm expecting that by the time I come to the sectoral, I'll be able to answer more fulsome in terms of some of the issues that you have raised. And I've taken note of them to make sure that I can respond to you before and, of course, during the sectoral. Thank you.
Minister, just two questions. One on the arrangement with JPS, which is about the broadband and allowing access to their poles. Is that an arrangement that is free to the government, or does the government have to compensate JPS in the form of a rental or access rate? And then secondly, with the dissolution of NESOL, what mechanism exists for communities that are not on the grid, where those communities would require homes to be wired? What mechanism exists for them to get assistance to wire their homes?
Thank you very much, member. Very, very good questions. As it relates to the first question, it has been a long and difficult negotiation with JPS, which just concluded. And I am indeed happy to say that we have come to an arrangement that in relation to this particular scenario with the broadband, that the use of the poles will be free. However, yes. So there is a broader policy issue that is being worked out between the National Works Agency, etc., which is to do with the rights of way. Because as you know, with the telecom companies being private now as against being owned partially by government, and JPS the same, there is some grandfathering that needs to take place and some negotiations. So I'm pleased to say that the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, for where NWA falls, and MSET are working now to come up with a final policy, which will obviously mean that in relation to the rights of way of government's property, there would have to be some compensation if it is that they are going to intend on charging. However, I must say that it has been quite a few months and it has not been easy. And I had a meeting with the new chairman of JPS just last week, and was able to get the commitment out of JPS after that. So it is a big win in terms of being able to fast track the broadband, which we so badly need, and they realized it and saw it. In relation to NESOL, as you know, that was transferred from the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology to local government and community development. The Ministry of Local Government, to my knowledge, is trying to come up with the necessary expertise within the ministry or outside of the ministry to come up with a implementation project. What I can say from MSET is that the funds that were being held for rural electrification have been transferred to Ministry of Local Government. So we really have nothing further to do with it until such time as the Ministry of Local Government comes out with their own new policy directives. And of course, I, as a rural MP, is affected, as all of us are, because we have outstanding projects that have been on the table for quite a while.
Oops. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. 3 very quick questions, Minister. I note that in terms of the National Broadband Initiative, the idea is to make sure we are fully digital by 2030. I wanted to ask because I see that most of our commitments worldwide for 2030, SDGs, etc., we are kind of behind schedule and missing some. So I wanted to find out, one, whether or not you are still on target to make it fully digital by 2030. And in that aspect as well, I wanted to ask, because I think it was the Minister of National Security who spoke about the southern band of Kingston and St. Andrew and what is happening there in terms of youths at risk and the crime situation and so on. And I'm not sure if in doing this National Broadband Initiative, any concern or focus, especially because what we're seeing is that in trying to build back better, we have to focus on vulnerable communities. So I would expect that that community along the southern band would be a priority. So I want to ask you what's happening there as far as the National Broadband Initiative is concerned. Then secondly, it has taken 5 months to do the first 60 sites. And you are committing to complete the next 130 sites in 3 months. I just want to make sure that that is not, I know it wouldn't be youthful exuberance, but it's not just simple optimism that is guiding that one. And then as it relates to the community access points, my question is similar to the one around the National Broadband Initiative, which again is, I see the 7 community access points that were done. I'm just wondering again, in terms of our vulnerable populations, where we know the inequity, the digital divide is really, really present, if there is a focus to make sure that those communities are brought up, because they need a little bit more bringing up than others. And I'm concerned about that because I didn't see a specific focus, and I'm wondering about what's happening to those who have been left behind before.
And just to assure you that the broadband initiative, which is both a short-term, long-term, is well advanced, and we are collaborating with all the key ministries as the rollout comes about. We are currently awaiting the IFC to come back to us with the National Broadband Initiative and the model that they are recommending in terms of the implementation. They are actually assisting the government of Jamaica in relation to that aspect. But in terms of the short-term plan, I can say to you that the importance of what you mentioned is not lost on us, and we are working very, 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 very closely with the various other ministries that are key to it. As it relates to the 189, the 3 Wi-Fi, community Wi-Fi, I can say to you that the procurement in relation to the 189, 50 odd are already implemented, and the procurement for the other balance to make up the 180, the 132 is far advanced. What will happen now within the month of February and March is the actual implementation by the contractors who have won the bids, who have assured us that they can meet the deadline. So I'm still setting March for the end of the financial year, and of course you know that the end of the financial year brings other issues with it because the money has to be spent, and I have no intention of returning that money to the consolidated fund. So they are also well aware of that. Remember, what I would say to you also is that each constituency has its own unique challenges. And therefore, if you feel that there is a need for special emphasis and priority to be given because of the issues that you raised, which include national security. We're more than happy to look at that and to work with you with a view of making sure that obviously the citizens benefit as a result of the equipment that can be utilized by the police in their fight against this pandemic named crime. So, as I said, I look forward to getting some feedback from you, and we can work to see how best we can get it implemented. Thank you.
House Leader. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 and its resolution, the Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 22 and its resolution, the Road Traffic Regulations 2022, the Partnership General Forms Regulations 2021 under the Partnership General Act, the Partnership Limited Forms Regulations 2021 under the Partnership Limited Act, Certified Appropriation Account for Head 6,000 Office of the Services Commission for the years 2013, 2014, and 2014, 2015. Head 68,000 and 68,000C for the Ministry of Transport and Mining for the years 2019, 2020, and 2019, for the years 2019, 2020, respectively. Ministry of Head 68,000, Ministry of Transport and Mining for the year 2018, 2019.
Bills brought from the Senate.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 28th day of January 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Incorporation and Vesting Law 1954 to make provision for the replacement of the offices which constitute the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to make provision for the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, to be conferred with express powers to govern its management and administration, and to validate and indemnify acts carried out by the Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies, in good faith during the period commencing on the 12th day of April, 1954, and ending on the day of commencement of this act, was passed in the Senate without amendment. Signed, Thomas Tavares, Vince Noje, CDQC, JP, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees. Reports from committees.
Madam Speaker, I'll have to seek recommittal of this item so as to allow for the report of the PAAC to be submitted at a later point in the proceedings today. May it please you to proceed, therefore, to notices of motions given orally.
Notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Development Bank Repeal Bill 2022.
Please, Dr. Chan.
The resolution is missing. Madam Speaker, again, I think they have left the motion. Oh, sir, Madam Speaker, I beg to give note that the next meeting of the House I'll move the Terrorism Prevention Act, Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022 Resolution. Whereas Section 15 of the Terrorism Prevention Act, hereinafter referred to the Act, imposes due reporting duties on certain specified entities, and whereas Section 15(2)(c) of the Act provides that the Minister may designate any entity as an entity to which provision of Section 15 of the Act shall apply. And whereas Section 15(2)(c) of the Act provides for aforementioned designation to be made by order subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 21st day of January 2022, the Minister made the Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022, and where it is desirable that the Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity, Trust and Corporate Services Provider Order 2022 be affirmed, and therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. The resolution may be cited as the Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity, Trust and Corporate Services Providers Order 2022 Resolution. 2. The Terrorism Prevention Designated Reporting Entity, Trust and Corporate Services Order 2022 is affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage I will move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Madam Speaker.
Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 Resolution, whereas by virtue of Section 4 of the Irrigation Act, the Minister may by order license a company to be the Irrigation Authority, and whereas on the 27th day of January 2022, the Minister made the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022, and whereas it is desirable that the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 Resolution, and 2. The Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order is hereby affirmed.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance will answer questions today in his name, preferred by the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, questions 15 and 16. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I now ask the Minister of Finance questions listed in my name.
Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker, I propose to, if it's with your agreement, answer question 16 and then question 15. Question 16. Would the Minister provide an update on the restoration works at the powerhouse following the recent explosion and fire at Jamalco? The reconstruction process is on track and will take place over 3 phases. In Phase 1, which should occur by June 2022, Jamalco expects the recommencement of operations at up to 50% of capacity, using steam from a set of boilers now being installed. It is expected that mining operations and associated jobs will begin to be restored in the weeks prior to the resumption of production. By the end of September 2022, Jamalco expects to be back at 100% production, which will mark Phase 2. Production costs should then be lower than in Phase 1, but still not at the most efficient level possible, because in Phase 2, Jamalco will still be relying on the temporary steam solution. Phase 3 involves the building of the powerhouse. Jamalco is considering a number of strategic options for achieving this. It is anticipated that completion of this reconstruction will be achieved by 2024. Would the Minister state if a claim has been made on the company's insurance and what is the value of the claim? Yes, a claim has been made for the full policy limit of $250 million. If the answer to Part 2 is the affirmative, would the Minister state A, if the claim has been settled? A claim has been made by Jamalco for the full policy limit of $250 million. The insurance policy has many layers, and a consortium of insurers and reinsurers provided coverage for different layers of insurance and in different amounts. If the meaning of settlement is whether full payment has been made, then the answer would be not yet, as payment is expected to be made over time as Jamalco rebuilds and restores. However, the expectation is that the claim will be settled in full over the course of time. B, the settlement amount. Please see the answer to 3A above. As of the 12th of January 2022, total insurance proceeds received thus far total $68 million. Part C, whether the settlement amount has been paid in full or in part. Please see answers to 3A and 3B. Part D, what has been done with such proceeds? The funds from the payments received to date are being used to finance the cleanup, asset preservation, and Phase 1 restoration activities. Under the insurance policies, Jamalco is the insured. As such, payment of the insurance proceeds is made to Jamalco rather than to any or each of the shareholders. Jamalco has put in place governance measures to be able to satisfy the insurers that insurance proceeds are used for restoration, rebuilding, and loss of earnings. This is necessary for future insurance payments to be released from the insurers to Jamalco. Question 4. Would the Minister state whether or not mining activities are continuing at Jamalco even though the refinery is shut? All mining contracts were suspended with effect from the 6th of October 2021. Limited reclamation and rehabilitation works are ongoing, however. The expectation is that with boilers now arriving and installation commencing, Phase 1 production will begin by the end of June. As such, mining activities are expected to resume to some extent in the weeks prior to the Phase 1 resumption. If the answer to Part 4 is in the affirmative, would the Minister state which mining companies are involved? Please see the previous answer. Question 6. Would the Minister state what are the current contractual arrangements with New Fortress Energy, suppliers of steam to Jamalco, in light of the shutdown of the plant? New Fortress Energy, or NFE's power plant, produces energy for the national grid. The steam produced as a byproduct is sold to Jamalco. Jamalco's long-term contractual arrangement with New Fortress Energy is a take-or-pay agreement, and this has not changed. However, a force majeure notice was served on New Fortress Energy after production ceased as a consequence of the fire. Since the fire, Jamalco has not made any monthly payments to New Fortress Energy under this contract. The New Fortress Energy steam contract has 18 years remaining, and it is expected that the terms will remain attractive to Jamalco once production resumes.
Thank you, Minister. Just two or so follow-up questions. In relation to the phasing back of production, you mentioned phase 1, phase 2, and the ultimate phase. You've also mentioned that insurance proceeds will contribute to these phases, especially phase 1. Can you indicate, outside of the proceeds, what are the additional costs for the restoration? And is it going to be based on contributions by the equity partners ratably? And then in relation to the energy situation, you mentioned a temporary steam solution. Will that temporary steam solution be derived from the New Forest Energy plant, or is this an additional facility being established as a temporary facility? And finally, in relation to the force majeure notice, is there any contention, or has New Forest Energy accepted that a force majeure situation has in fact occurred?
Thank you for those follow-up questions. The expectation is, with respect to the rehabilitation across phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, the expectation is that that entire rehabilitation, rebuilding, and restoration will be financed with the proceeds of the insurance claim without resort to shareholder funds. With respect to the question on the temporary steam solution, we have imported a set of boilers. The full complement, I believe, is supposed to be 11 by the time they all arrive. Installation has commenced, and the expectation is that those boilers will provide the source of the steam that Jamalco needs. Now, it is quite possible that the fuel supply for those boilers could involve some kind of arrangement with NFE, which of course are suppliers of a particular kind of fuel. But it would be premature to speak in definitive terms about that. With respect to the force majeure and whether there's any contention, as I said, that force majeure notice was delivered 5 months ago, I guess, in October. And my understanding is, to date, I'm not aware of any contention to that claim. I'm not aware. All right, question 16. Oh. Okay, I propose to answer question 16. No, sorry, question 15. Would the minister state if Clarendon Alumina Production, CAP, has established a consultancy to corporatize the special purpose vehicle established to hold the government of Jamaica shares in Jamalco? The incorporation of Jamalco has been the policy goal spanning consecutive administrations. In pursuit of this goal, CAP has hired in the past, and it continues to hire, professional services firms to help work through the myriad legal, financial, tax, accounting, transaction, and regulatory issues that need to be successfully navigated for incorporation to be successful. If the answer to part 1 above is in the affirmative, would the minister state whether a contract for the consultancy has been awarded? The question is based on a false premise. The notion of the consultancy in reference to the incorporation exercise is a false one. Over a number of years, CAP has sought legal, tax, regulatory, finance, accounting, and transaction advice from local and international professional services firms in pursuit of the policy goal of Incorporation of Jamaica. The procurement method to select the consultant, referring to question 1, the answer to question 1, part A, the premise of the question is false. Question, I believe it's 2, even though it's numbered, no, sorry, it's question 3. If a contract for consultancy was awarded, would the minister state if the contract awardee is CCPA Capital Partners, a company registered in Belize? Remember, a company called CCA Capital Partners was awarded a contract in June 2019. This company was registered in Belize. However, to the best of my understanding, its place of registration was moved to 139B Orange Street, Kingston, in early 2020. Will the minister indicate whether CCPA Capital Partners have a track record in corporate consultancies? Again, that's not within my portfolio responsibility to opine on a firm. So I'll just say, to the best of my understanding, when CCA Capital Partners was engaged by CAP, it was essentially a sole proprietorship. I believe that the sole proprietor would have had a track record in debt financing, given that he was once head of corporate banking at a leading financial institution in Jamaica. To the best of my understanding, however, CCA Capital Partners was a newly established operation, and I do not know of any evidence that suggests that this company had a track record of completion of corporate consultancies at the time they were engaged by CAP. To be clear, however, for the first engagement, which was primarily concerned with raising financing, the principal of CCA Capital Partners had a previous career in banking, which would have provided him with relevant experience. If the answer to part 4 is in the affirmative, would the minister state, A, how many contracts were awarded? 5 contracts were awarded, and that is to CCA Capital Partners. B, the length of each contract awarded. The length of each contract is as below. The first contract was for 6 months beginning May 29, 2019. The second contract was for 6 months beginning November 30th, 2019, and it was terminated sometime in May 2020. The third contract for 3 months began on May 10th, 2020, and went to August 10th, 2020. The fourth contract was for 5 months and went from November 11th, 2020 to April 11th, 2020. There was an addendum to that contract on February the 1st, which ran concurrently for 3 months with the fourth contract. So the fourth contract and an addendum to the fourth contract, which ran concurrently for 3 months. And there was a fifth contract from May 11, 2021 to October 11, 2021. Part C, the value of each contract. According to the documentation, the following were the associated fees of each contract. First contract, $10,000 as advisory fee and $10,000 monthly, thereby totaling $70,000. The second contract was for $10,000 per month, totaling $60,000. The third contract was for $92,320, and this contract was task-based and fees paid on receipt of work. The fourth contract was for a $10,000 engagement fee and a monthly fee of $16,000, totaling $90,000. There was an addendum to the fourth contract, which ran concurrently with the fourth contract, and I mentioned that earlier, for a period of 3 months in the amount of $20,000 per month, totaling $60,000. And so this was in addition to the $90,000 for the fourth contract. The fifth contract was for $24,000 per month, and that totaled $120,000. Now that's according to the documentation of the contracts. According to the records of CAP that have been available to me, the total amount paid by CAP to CCA Capital Partners over the 25 months was $506,470.96 US dollars. Part D, the deliverables associated with each contract. When you ask for deliverables, the deliverables I have included in an Appendix 1, which lists, and I will, with your agreement, not read all of the deliverables because it would take quite a long time, but it is all of the deliverables are listed in Appendix 1, which has also been tabled along with the answers to the questions. Would the minister state if the principal of CCA Capital Partners is Andrew Simpson, a Jamaican banker? The principal of CCA Capital Partners is Mr. Andrew Simpson, who is a former banker. Will the Minister state if CAP has done a cost-benefit analysis of the consultancy and the result? My understanding is that the Board of CAP compared what it proposed to pay to CCA Capital Partners with what other multinational advisory firms charge for similar engagements, and concluded that it was cheaper to hire CCA Capital Partners. In my opinion, however, this involved some amount of false equivalence. Considerations of the broad-ranging technical capacity of such multinational advisory firms, their decade-long and established track records, and value for money may have been underweighted in such an analysis. Would the Minister state if the chairman of CAP has resigned and what were the reasons for the resignation? Well, that's in the public domain. The former chairman has resigned, and the reason for the resignation, based on his letter, stated, in quotes, "The developments over the past few days have left me feeling uncomfortable, and I cannot continue to operate under this structure." Question 9. Would the Minister state if the Board has approved a further consultancy agreement with CCPA Capital Partners? The last contract with CCA Capital Partners expired on October 11, 2021, and there have been no renewals. If the answer to Part 9 is in the affirmative, would the Minister indicate whether a meeting of the Board of CAP convened to approve the latest award? That's not applicable based on the answer to the previous question. Question 11. Would the Minister state the reasons for the CAP Board meeting, for the CAP Board convening a second meeting to approve the contract in the absence of the then Chairman? My understanding is that the purpose of the meeting convened was to clarify the decision taken at a previously convened Board meeting in the absence of some Board members. Question 12. Would the Minister provide a list of all consultancy contracts entered by CAP since 2016? In the usual course of business, CAP has engaged local and multinational firms for the provision of legal, financial, tax, audit, and accounting advice. And I've had dialogue with the member, and I think you understand. Right? Would the Minister provide a list of all contracts entered by Jamaica since 2016 which required and received support or no objection by CAP? Jamaica is a commercial entity that operates in a locally and internationally competitive industry. It is owned 55% by Noble and 45% by CAP, which is owned 100% by the government of Jamaica. Jamaica has complex operations and thousands of local and international suppliers. It could be detrimental to Jamaica for such a disclosure to be made, and I crave the understanding of the member from East Kingston and Port Royal of this fact. Question 14. Would the Minister state if the management of CAP retains its confidence? CAP has only 5 members of staff who are hard-working Jamaicans. They take strategic direction from the Board of CAP and work with advisory firms as approved by the Board. We have a new Board in place, and CAP is engaged in the complex task of recovering from the fire at Jamaica and completing the incorporation exercise. The job of evaluating the management in the future against these and other objectives lies with the Board.
Thank you, Minister. You had raised with me, and I had agreed that the aim of the question is to focus on what occurred with the company, CCA Partners, and it was my intention for you to dig up every contract with other companies, and so I had agreed with you that we wouldn't press for that information. But I'm just trying to be clear on the answers that you have provided. So you did say that the award was made to CCA Partners without a tender process. Well, in your answers, I wasn't clear on what was the process to determine that this company had the requisite skill sets, experience to pursue this very expensive work. The work amounted to 76 million Jamaican dollars. So I still wanted to hear on that. And yes, you have indicated by way of an appendix sent to me as to whether or not the objectives were met. And the primary objective was to advise the government in relation to the pursuit of corporatizing the entity. That is my understanding as to the main reason behind this contract. Would you say how close we are to that, and whether or not the company's guidance assisted? My own understanding is that we are still very far away from corporatizing, and that Jamalco itself would have benefited from its own consultancies in relation to the act of corporatizing. So if you could just comment on the role that CCA partners played, that the primary purpose was to enable both parties, CAP and Noble, to get towards corporatization, and thirdly, how far away are we from that endeavor? You've also mentioned that the fourth contract, which was for 5 months, that in that fourth contract there was an addendum signed in February 2021. Could you explain what was that addendum about, and probably to indicate the specific value of that?
So the process through which, and just to be clear, we're speaking here about a historical matter and not a current matter, and a matter that happened some time ago. Okay? The process by which CCA Capital Partners was engaged in June 2019 was pursuant to an unsolicited proposal that was made in May of 2019. Now, you will be aware that over a period of time, as commodity prices moved in adverse directions and CAP was under the burden of a forward sale agreement, CAP's cash flow was such that it was unable to make its monthly working capital contributions to Jamalco over a period of time. During that period of time, Noble would have advanced its working capital contributions in addition to CAP's share of the working capital contributions on behalf of CAP. That created an obligation from Jamalco to Noble, because Noble overpaid what was legally owing by them, and a commensurate obligation from CAP to Jamalco. A time came when Noble was no longer able to advance those payments on behalf of CAP. And there was notice that that day would arise. And therefore, CAP sought to raise financing in the debt markets in order to be able to, first of all, pay off the obligations that it had now developed between itself and Jamalco, and to finance its working capital obligations going forward. It is in pursuit of some debt financing solution in the private market that CCA Capital Partners would have been initially hired by CAP. Subsequently thereafter, having been made aware of the problem, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service agreed to advance a loan to CAP that would accomplish the objectives for which CCA Capital Partners was initially hired. And the best interpretation of what happened is that CCA Capital Partners was there and available, and the scope of work continued beyond the initial scope, which was limited mostly to financing. You asked a question about right. Now, the question about corporatizing and so forth is a little, I mean, the terms of reference for which CCA Capital Partners was hired is, in furtherance to your question, is detailed in a great extent in the appendix that I supplied. The Board of Cap, I think, was under the belief that they needed advice, and they went out and they sought it. The incorporation process on behalf of the government of Jamaica was being advanced by legal, accounting, and tax advisors that the government had retained that were advancing this exercise. But it came to a point that CAP itself had to satisfy itself of these particular arrangements, and they felt that they needed guidance, and they went out. And I mean, this CCA Capital Partners would have been providing this or seeking debt financing on their behalf, and that need came to an end at a particular point, and the best interpretation of what happened is that CCA Capital Partners was then asked to advise CAP and board members of CAP on some of the matters that it would have had to consider to do with the incorporation exercise. But it wasn't a case that CCA Capital Partners was at the forefront of the incorporation, if you understand what I'm saying. They would have been reviewing things that were already done and advising as to whether, but by already done, what I mean, documents that would have been prepared, and giving an opinion on those documents as to whether they were in keeping with what the board members of CAP thought would have been in the best interest of CAP.
Minister, I know the difficulty because you have mentioned that you weren't the person in the seat, but I just want to be clear. One of the primary functions of the company was to try to advise on debt financing of CAP in relation to its obligations to Noble. But you have just said that that effort really didn't come to anything because you were the one who had to bail CAP out. So the work that they were endeavoring to do never happened, never materialized, because you did it in the end. Which is a critical point that has been raised. And you did say that the proposal was unsolicited, which would have been in breach of the proper procurement policy. You wanted to ask something, please? You wanted to ask something? Okay. No further questions?
Not on that matter, but
Beg your pardon?
for still on questions and questions, Madam Speaker.
Sure.
If that is so, then, Madam Speaker, at the expiration of 21 days, I will ask the Minister of Education and Youth the following question. Standing in my name.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motion to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. public business.
Madam Speaker,
Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, if I may, I'd ask you for the recommittal of announcements, the following items: announcements, reports from committee, and notices of motion given orally.
The question before the House is that 3 items on the agenda be recommitted: announcements, reports from committees, and notices of motions given orally. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. So we're now going to recommit the item announcements.
Also laid on the table of the House today is a copy of the report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee on its deliberations on the 3rd supplementary estimate of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31, 2022.
Reports from committees.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Public Administration Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the 3rd supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022.
Minister Shaw, do you?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved that the Road Traffic Regulations 2022 under the Road Traffic Act, which were laid on the table of the House on the 1st of February 2022, be affirmed.
Minister Clark.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the House. I'll move the following 2 motions. 1. Be it resolved that the Partnership General Forms Regulations 2021, which was laid on the table of the House on the 1st day of February 2022, be affirmed. And secondly, be it resolved that the Partnership General Forms Regulations 2021, which was laid on the table of the House on the 1st day of February 2022, be affirmed.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of public business.
Members, before the House is a question that the item presentation of bills be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022.
A bill shortly entitled the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I will move for the...
No. We're having the second reading of the bill today. No, House Leader, we can't entertain the teaching council bill today. It's not before the... Which is too untidy.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are now at public business, and I ask for you to call on Mr. Phillips. Thank you at this point.
Members, we are now at the item public business. Chairman, PAC. Cannot do that.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, the question before the House is that there's a suspension of the standing orders to enable the chairman to take the motion notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the third supplementary estimate for the financial year 2021-22 came to the PAAC last week, Wednesday. It reflects the reallocation of $1.031 billion within the recently approved second supplementary estimates, leaving the total budgeted expenditure for financial year 21-22 unchanged at $893 billion. Of the amounts to be reallocated, $836.88 million is within the recurrent expenditure and $194.29 within the capital budget. The closure of Head 21,000, Ministry of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment and Climate Change, and transfer of its functions to Head 19,000, which is Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. The establishment of Head 27,000, the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, and the transfer of records and information management and information regulation services from Head 41,000, the Ministry of Education and Youth, formerly Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, to Head 15,000, to Office of the Prime Minister. Members express the hope that the Office of the Parliamentary Council, which was reassigned to the new ministry and which has been understaffed over the years, would get adequate funding. It was expressed, Madam Speaker, in the committee that those agencies and departments which are now transferred for the new ministry to be more effective, to ensure that the adequate funding for the same things that we complained about when they were under the Ministry of Justice, to ensure that the success of the new ministry is not what it was under the Ministry of Justice, but that in the new financial year, that the adequate funding is given so that we can see the benefits of that new ministry. Madam Speaker, if it pleases you, that's the end of my report.
If there are no other contributions to the debate, we ask that the motion be approved. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Motion is approved. House Leader?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the item notices of motions given orally be recommitted.
Question before the House is that the item notices of motions given orally be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the House. I will move, be it resolved that the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, and the second supplementary estimates, not in committee, Jamaica public bodies estimates of revenue expenditure for the year ending March 31st, 2022, which were laid on the table of the House on the 25th day of January 2022, be referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, for consideration and report. And be it further resolved that the committee, during its deliberations, take into account the recommendations contained in the report of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives on its deliberations on the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the first day of February 2022. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Back to the item public business now on the agenda. For the teaching bill.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Those against? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motion be approved.
For the House is that the motion for the estimates to be referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against?
Ayes have it. Madam Speaker, I ask that the meeting of the House be suspended for the Standing Finance Committee to meet to consider the third supplementary estimates of expenditure.
The meeting of the House is now suspended for the Finance Committee to meet to consider the third supplementary estimates of expenditure. Members, the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives is now convened. May I ask Member Brown Burke to lead us in prayer.
That's right. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you once again on behalf of the people of Jamaica as we do their business. Guide this meeting so that we might use our time efficiently and that we might go through quickly on behalf of the people of Jamaica. Bless all of us as we try to do the best for our people and help us so that what we do will be seen as being done in the interest of the people of Jamaica. These and other mercies we ask in the Father's precious name.
Where do we go now?
Ask Minister how to proceed.
Minister, how are we going to proceed with the...
So if I could just make an opening comment, and then we...
As long as it is very brief. It's now 3:48.
It will take as much time as it needs for me to explain.
I'm going to ask you to try and be as concise as you can.
As usual, Madam Chair.
No, not as usual. I hear the chuckle, and I would like to join with that chuckle too.
Chair, I'm here to do the people's business, but I take due note of your comment. Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, rather, the third supplementary estimates which were tabled last week were tabled because of the reorganization of the government that the Prime Minister announced, I believe, on the 11th of January or thereabouts. The day of that announcement was the day that the second supplementary estimates were tabled in the House. And we would have had to either delay those second supplementary estimates so that the heads could be, the new ministries could be funded and all ministries taken out, or we could do it the way that we have done it. We couldn't have done it the first way to delay because, as I explained when I opened the debate on the second supplementary estimates, that certain ministries were in need of the funding, and which is the precise reason why we had the circumstances where we had standing finance the day after, and we all came back on the Thursday for the second supplementary estimate to be passed. Now, Madam Speaker, between when these third supplementary estimates were tabled and today, there has been needs have arisen to make certain amendments that I'm proposing to make in the Standing Finance Committee, which have been tabled, and that it primarily is about two separate activities. The first is the redirection of approximately $2 billion, just under $2 billion, $1.989 billion, from a number of heads to the police department as follows. From the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service in the amount of $357 million, $309 million for the procurement of equipment for the census to take place in the next fiscal year, which has been slower than programmed, and $48 million for the slow pace of the utilization of funds that were provided to support ministries, departments, and agencies. And then there's an amount of $981 million from the Ministry of National Security relating to a higher than anticipated attrition rate for the for the JDF and lower than anticipated recruitment of professional entry officers and the deliberate effort by the JDF to reduce the number of members of the National Reserve who are on call-out on a regular basis. And on the and $500 million from the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, the sum that will not be utilized by the Universal Service Fund in this fiscal year due to slower than program implementation of previous initiatives, and $105 million from the Accountant General Department from savings resulting from the slower than program refurbishment of the new office. And on the capital side, just taking the opportunity to ensure that the full capital budget is actually spent, just to tidy up from areas where there's underspending so far anticipated for the next 6 weeks, and to put it in an area where it's likely to be spent. Adjustments on the capital reflect the redirection of $1.75 billion from various projects across a few ministries, a tidying up exercise towards the South Coast Improvement Project. Based on expenditure to date and projections to the end of the fiscal year, some projects are projected to end the year with unspent balances, and the South Coast Highway Improvement Project has demonstrated the capacity to absorb the additional sum before the end of fiscal year 21-22. Madam Speaker, one thing that we have done over the last few years is to attempt to so manage the capital budget that the amount budgeted for capital is actually spent, which has been a shortcoming over a long period of time. That we are, certainly over the last few years, we have achieved COVID, the 2020 as an exception, we've achieved near to 95% or higher capital budget execution. And this reorganization here, which I'm asking the Standing Finance Committee to facilitate, is certainly the capital side of it is geared towards that.
Madam Chairman, I only have one question. Could the Minister indicate what subjects the current Ministry of Justice has responsibility for? Because a number have been transferred.
The current Minister of Justice, I don't have all of them on the top of my head, but I know that it includes the courts, the DPP, dispute resolution, and legal aid clinic, among a number of other, the JPs, etc., a number of other responsibilities. Just this morning we opened a restorative justice center, and a restorative justice center is programmed for Southwest St. Andrew. Yeah. So it's very important work.
Very, very. Especially in the court.
So Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, if we could put the amendments.
How are we going to proceed now?
No, if we could just ask if we could put the amendments to the committee.
Very well. The amendments have been circulated among us all, so the amendments to the third supplementary estimates are before us, and we seek the approval of the members. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? I therefore put to us as members the third supplementary estimates as amended. Those in favor? Aye. The report, therefore, of the second supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, with the amendments inserted, and the third supplementary estimates, Jamaica Public. Third supplementary estimates for the year ending March 31st, 2022 is before us. Is it the wish of the committee that I sign the reports? Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Why is it? Why did we have this? Where's the report? Members, we are waiting for the report to be copied so that I can have the report signed, and then we will resume the sitting of the House. This honorable House now resumes its sitting.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the items, announcements, reports from committees, and notices of motions given orally be recommitted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the items, announcements, report from committees, and notices of motions given orally be recommitted. Those in favour? Those against? The items are recommitted. Announcements?
Also laid on the table of the House today is the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31, 2022, which were laid on the table of the House on the 25th day of January 2022.
Reports from committees.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022.
Notices of motions given orally. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. Be it resolved that the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on its deliberations on the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending March 31st, 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the first day of February 2022, be adopted. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Public business.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question is that there is a suspension of the standing orders to enable the minister to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, normally we would commence debate, but I think with the member from South East, we have conspired together to relieve you of the burden of listening to us. And I therefore ask, with your consent, that the member... Oh, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, this is really just a reallocation to facilitate the changes made by the Prime Minister. The opposition doesn't really have a lot of questions. We have already asked about what is left in the Ministry of Justice, which I think needs to be clarified, but we're not going to get into that debate here. All right?
No. Julian, you asked a question. Member, so I have to answer the question. I have in front of me the assignment of subjects for the Ministry of Justice. Here are the following subjects for the Ministry of Justice. The administration of justice, 1. 2, the conditional discharge of forensic psychiatric inmates. Coroners, 3. Court administration services, 4. Criminal records, rehabilitation of offenders. Dispute resolution, 5. Drug rehabilitation program, 6. Drug court rehabilitation program for children, 7. Inquiries into the causes of fires and accidents, 8. Extraditions, 9. Justices of the peace, 10. Legal profession, 11. Marriage licenses, 12. Maintenance and affiliation, 13. Mutual legal assistance in criminal matters, 14. Notaries public, 15. Obscene Publication Act, 17. Victim Services, 18. And the departments under the Ministry of Justice include the Administrator General's Department, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Dispute Resolution Foundation, the General Legal Counsel, the Legal Aid Council, the Justice Training Institute. And I believe, yes, Madam Speaker. With that, Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be approved.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is approved. I'm now going to invite the Minister of
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise to close the debate on the resolution regarding children living and working on the streets that I brought to this Honourable House last December, I am reminded of a most profound and poignant quote. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." Madam Speaker, our children generally are among our nation's most vulnerable, let alone those who are subjected to the travails and hazards of living and working on the streets. Just this past weekend, I was reminded of the precarious position of many of our nation's children when I was told that there was a most disturbing video which surfaced across social media platforms showing two girls, one of whom could be no more than 8 years old. They were seen mimicking the raunchy expressions presented in that now infamous music video by one of our female entertainers. The sad truth, Madam Speaker, is that the videos are often taken by misguided adults.
There is a loud murmur. The minister is on her feet. Please.
Okay. Madam Speaker, the sad truth is that the videos are often taken by misguided adults and posted on social media, often by those same misguided adults. Our children are vulnerable and exposed in many cases, Madam Speaker, and it is for these reasons that we must have all hands on deck as it relates to their case and protection. So monumental is the task at hand that no one minister can be seen as the solution. No one ministry can be seen as the solution either. The care and protection of our children is an all-Jamaica issue, and it requires an all-of-Jamaica solution. And whilst that is so, I am cognizant of my responsibility as the minister to whom the youth portfolio, which includes children's affairs, is entrusted. Indeed, it is within this context that I am fortified and remain resolute in leading the charge in fostering a more conscious and responsive society. Madam Speaker, a society in which child care and protection policies are robust, a society in which the coordination of programs and interventions produce the desired results, a society that is kinder and gentler as it pertains to the care and protection of our children. It must be our collective resolve and desire, Madam Speaker, to quickly emerge as a society which embraces and preserves the innocence of our children, safeguards their interests as inherently impressionable, curious, and creative beings, a society which protects their communities and secures their future. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Education and Youth and its lead agency charged with addressing the scourge of children living and working on the streets is the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, an agency that never goes to sleep as it must respond to the cries of our children wherever they are, regardless of the time of day or night. Madam Speaker, CPFSA is the safety net when all other safety nets have failed. Madam Speaker, as I sought Cabinet's approval for the publication of the final report of the study, I simultaneously took the opportunity to request establishment of a multi-sectoral body to review and finalize a street and working children framework of action, as well as oversee the implementation of said framework of action in a bid to cauterize and significantly reduce the prevalence of children living and working on the streets of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I can report to this Honourable House that consequent on the approval of Cabinet, the multi-sectoral body named the Street and Working Children Task Force has been established. The task force, Madam Speaker, convened its first meeting in November of 2021, and I'm very optimistic about the contribution they will be making to our country and the impact their work will have on our society and our children in particular. It should be noted that the task force will be meeting monthly for the first 6 months and has already drafted its action plan for the 2022-2023 financial year. The task force has also identified certain activities for immediate action. These include creating an inventory of services or initiatives that are being executed or at an advanced stage of planning for implementation by ministries, departments, agencies, and other partners. Developing and implementing a public education campaign designed to mobilize others and potential partners at all levels to play a role in the response framework. Create a repository of training programs that are in existence or design new ones to meet the needs of the groups being trained, and develop a monitoring and evaluation framework to guide data collection, performance tracking, and reporting on the work of the task force. Madam Speaker, it bears affirming and reiterating that the Ministry of Education and Youth takes seriously and remains purposefully committed to addressing the disturbing reality of children living and working on the streets of Jamaica. The Ministry accepts that substantially reducing, if not ultimately eliminating, the prevalence of children living and working on the streets of Jamaica is a Herculean task, and indeed will require efforts and resources over and beyond those of the Ministry itself or any one agency of government. Madam Speaker, permit me to pause to say a big thank you to the former State Minister in the Ministry of Education and Youth and member from North Central Clarendon. Madam Speaker, he was front and center of our efforts as a ministry and administration to improve the care and well-being of our nation's children, particularly those in state care. Thank you. Madam Speaker, we took careful note as colleague ministers of the findings of the final report of study on children living and working on the streets of Jamaica. We recognize that whilst the study report was cause for concern given the stark picture it presented, the time was opportune for decisive action and a concerted effort to bring the resources of the state to bear and engage key stakeholders in charting the way forward. Madam Speaker, it is with that outlook in mind and the backdrop of the broad context that has been presented vis-à-vis the Ministry's steps to significantly reduce, if not eliminate altogether, the scourge of children living and working on the streets, that I call members of this Honourable House to action and commend the resolutions for affirmative vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. The motion has been approved. House Leader, where?
Madam Speaker, it is intended to take the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2021 now, the resolution. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with the Civil Service Establishment Act of 1976 and the Civil Service Establishment General Order, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2020-21 has been prepared and is presented to indicate changes to the Civil Service Establishment General Order of 2020. Madam Speaker, the Civil Service Establishment Order 2021 outlines the reorganization of ministries and departments and consequently the creation of new posts, abolition of posts, and the reclassification, upgrading, and retitling of existing posts. Madam Speaker, the major changes to be effected in the Civil Service Establishment Order 2021 includes the establishment of 61 new posts in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, the Ministry of Education and Youth's, it was then Information, Division of School Services, to enhance the Ministry's communication and public relations and allow for better working synergy and overall improvement in efficiency. Madam Speaker, 53 new posts were established and 9 posts upgraded in the Department of Correctional Services, in the Medical Services Division. This is expected to cause an improvement in medical services provided to inmates, as well as an improvement in operational management of the Custodial Division. 66 additional posts were established in the Supreme Court to strengthen the staffing and structural arrangement needed in order to effectively execute the mandate of the judicial system. Madam Speaker, whenever ministerial portfolios are reassigned, accompanied changes to roles where applicable must be reflected in the civil service establishment in order to become permanent. This order also includes changes in the Ministries of Agriculture and Fisheries, Industry, Investment and Commerce, Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment and Climate Change, and Tourism, as they were then. At the end of this year, we'll have another. It's done once a year at the end of the calendar year. Madam Speaker, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2021 reflects changes in 3 areas. Part 1, Madam Speaker, shows changes in a complement of posts in ministries and departments. These changes include retitling, reclassification, and upgrading of posts, as well as the creation of new posts and the effective dates for these changes. These changes are broken down as follows. 434 new posts were created, 153 posts were upgraded, 93 posts were reclassified, 289 posts were retitled, 1 post was red circled, 1 was regraded, and 1 was reinstated. Part 2 shows the revised salary scales for the Department of Correctional Services, casually, daily paid, and locally engaged staff in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is in line with the signed 2017 to 2020 Heads of Agreement, or 2021 Heads of Agreement between Government of Jamaica and applicable bargaining groups. Part 3, Madam Speaker, which is the final section, shows the abolition of 217 posts from the establishment, from various ministries and departments, including 173 from Tax Administration Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the abolition of these roles in TAJ does not represent a downsizing of staff, but the administrative removal of the residual roles left on the establishment from when TAJ was a directorate. Now as a department, TAJ roles are captured elsewhere. The affirmative resolution is therefore sought for the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2021. Madam Speaker, just to note, as I have done when discussing previous orders, the Post Operations Committee of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, which comprises members from the Ministry, members from the offices of the Services Commission, and the Jamaica Civil Service Association, continue to meet regularly to review the civil service establishment, including considering requests and comments from various ministries, departments, and agencies. This is done with the objective of improving the efficiency of the establishment as well as the delivery of service to the nation. Madam Speaker, I ask that this Honourable House approves the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2021.
Minister, just a question. Could you indicate what the net effect of the changes are in terms of the public sector wage bill, whether we have experienced a savings or whether there's been an addition to the wage bill?
Minister, I would also ask, in view of the reclassification exercise, which is to start in earnest in April, after preparatory work have been done already, and our desire to have a world-class public sector able to attract the talent it needs to deliver the services that the people of Jamaica need from the state. Is it your anticipation that the reclassification can be successfully executed within the context of the 9% of GDP cap that exists in the fiscal responsibility framework, which was introduced as part of the original IMF program? Or do you think that there may need to be some review of that particular metric? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The response to the first question, the changes will be marginal in the overall. The wage bill is 240 billion over on average, thereabouts. The changes here will be, a few. No. New post 434, abolished post 217. So net new, about 200 in an establishment of over 100,000. So it would be a nominal increase, very small increase. With respect to the question on the, we call it a restructuring. So it's a compensation restructuring. We have a current way in which the compensation is structured now, and we're abandoning that completely and have a new compensation structure. I gave a speech at the Stock Exchange last week where I said that this will have the impact of increase in the wage to GDP ratio, which will take us, quite a bit outside of that band. We were outside of that band in 2020 because of the crisis, and in 2021 the economy is recovering, but still outside of that band. This restructuring exercise will definitely have us outside of that band, and we're going to have to, and I'll speak to it more fulsomely later, but we're going to have to amend that part of our rules to accommodate it. Now, having raised the issue here, I just need to if you contextualize it. There are components of expenditure that contribute to a public officer's compensation that are not, for historical and legal reasons, not included in that wage and salaries line that we commonly use to establish the wage to GDP ratio. In the restructuring exercise, we aim to tidy all of that up, and anything to do with compensation will be in someone's salary as opposed to being in different places. There are certain allowances, for example, that are not legally and historically recognized as wages and salaries. So for that reason alone, there has to be a redefinition. But with the expansion that we expect, that would be another reason why that ratio is going to go up. And it's going to be important, however, that over the medium, if it stays up indefinitely, then that is a problem, right? Because it means less resources for invested in the people of Jamaica, the 2.9 million others, right? So we have to find ways through investing in technology and pursuing efficiency, and obviously from the growth of the economy and so on, for that to come into a new level over the medium term. Because of the restructuring, and we're taking things that historically have not been in that 9, and we're putting it now in that level. That's a bookkeeping thing, and so we have to redefine for that alone, right? So when we put a new level in, we wouldn't come back to that particular one. We have to choose a new one, and we'll have dialogue before I bring the legislation here. Yeah.
So a follow-up on this question. In terms of process, what is the engagement with the different public sector bargaining groups in terms of this restructuring? And what is your anticipation in terms of a time frame to complete it by?
Oh, this is an early kickoff on it. I'm happy for the opportunity. So the compensation restructuring, we are able to contemplate it due to the fact that the public sector bargaining units entered into a 4-year wage agreement the last time around. 2017 to 2021, obviously signed at different periods within that, 2018 and 2019. That allowed for the time for us to hire consultants and to engage in a lot of detailed analysis and measurement and so forth over a couple of years. So I want to acknowledge that up front, that we're able to do this because the public sector bargaining units had the vision and the foresight and the confidence to invest in this period by agreeing to a 4-year wage deal. Now, what we are planning from here on is we'd have had a meeting last week with all public sector bargaining groups where we would have given them an overview of what is to come. We will continue those consultations, but in smaller groups, maybe on an individual bargaining group basis, or groups that are similarly aligned and small in size. We might consider them together. We'll speak to members, get parliamentarians together, get whoever is paid, whoever can be considered a public servant. We intend to reach out with information and to engage in some kind of, to engage in ensuring people understand the principles behind the restructuring and what to expect. The budget that will be tabled will anticipate this. The effective date we expect to be the 1st of April, even though the implementation date will occur after that. In this fiscal year, yes. We intend to implement it in this fiscal year, but it would take effect in April. So whenever we, 21 in 22, 23, right. So it would take effect as at April 1st, but the implementation date will be as soon as we want it to be as soon as possible, but one of our prerequisites is to be able to get out and to be able to speak to as many groups and people as possible so persons know what to expect, and to, it's a big change. It's a very ambitious reform, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak about it in greater detail. But thank you for asking those questions. It allows me to at least to start, in the Parliament from now. So, Madam Speaker, I ask that the resolution be approved.
Members, a question before the House is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, the next item would be the terrorism prevention designated reported entity, trust and corporate services providers order 2022, and it will be taken in its finality by the Minister of National Security.
Dr. Chang.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders, enable me to take the motion notes of which I gave earlier. And terrorism, yeah.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the motion notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank
Minister, you may proceed.
Madam Speaker, the government continues to take steps to strengthen the country's internal mechanism to combat criminality of all forms and at all levels. Today I put before the House, the Honourable House, the terrorism prevention designated reporting entity, trust and corporate service providers, Order 2022, which is approved in the Upper House on January 28, 2022. Money laundering and the financing of terrorism are threats to our financial sector that we must address with a sense of urgency. Any loophole within our financial system will provide opportunities for criminals to move their funds to, through or within jurisdictions that do not have the requisite safeguards. Strengthening our framework will therefore disrupt the access of criminals to resources and make it more difficult for them to profit from their illicit activities and to prevent them from, in fact, getting involved in some of the activities they tend to get involved in our jurisdiction. The terrorism designated reporting entity, trust and corporate services providers, Order 2022, forms part of Jamaica's National Action Plan to enhance our anti-money laundering counter-terrorism financing framework. Section 15.2 of the Terrorism Prevention Act permits the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade by order subject to affirmative resolution to designate an entity as a reporting entity for certain purposes under the Act. Section 14 of the Terrorism Prevention Act provides that an entity will be classified as a listed entity if it is designated as a terrorist entity by the United Nations Security Council, or if the Director of Public Prosecutions has reasonable grounds to believe that the entity knowingly committed or participated in the commissioning of a terrorism offense, or is knowingly acting on behalf of, at the direction of, or in association with an entity so designated by the United Nations. In either case, an entity can only be designated a listed entity pursuant to an order from a judge of the Supreme Court based on an application of the Director of Public Prosecutions. To date, Jamaica's court orders relate only to entities designated by the United Nations Security Council. Section 15 of the Terrorism Prevention Act provides that certain entities, namely reporting entities, must periodically report whether they are in possession or in control of property owned or controlled by or on behalf of a listed entity. Reporting entities must also notify the Financial Investigation Division where they suspect that a transaction involves property that is connected with or intended to be used in the commission of a terrorism offense, or is involved with or for the benefit of a listed entity or a terrorist group. Business other than financial institutions and business in the financial sector may be designated as reporting entities under the Terrorism Prevention Act. This was done in 2017 in respect of sectors such as real estate dealers, casinos, gaming machine operators, and accountants. The order before the House today and the proceeds of the crime designated non-financial institutions, trust and corporate services providers, Order 2022, which was approved in this House, Honourable House on January 11, 2022, will ensure the effective supervision of trust and corporate services operating in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the effective supervision of trust and corporate service providers is one of the targets of Recommendation 40 of the Financial Action Task Force for TAF recommendations. Members of this House will be acutely aware of the implications of failing to adequately implement FATF recommendations. In this 2017 Mutual Evaluation Report, several deficiencies were identified in Jamaica's regulatory framework concerning trust and corporate services providers. The monitoring of providers of trust and corporate services was identified as one of the areas requiring improvement in Jamaica's national risk assessment. The implementation of the terrorism prevention designated reporting entity, trust and corporate services providers, Order 2022, and other critical anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing initiatives that are in train will further strengthen Jamaica's financial systems, disrupt the financing of illicit activities, and more generally, ensure compliance with applicable international standards. This order is therefore another critical step in Jamaica's anti-money laundering efforts and deserving of our full support, the full support of this House by affirmative. Madam Speaker, it is crucial. I now seek to have the support of the House on this issue. It is said that if you track the money, you find the criminals. And that's what we have to do and get all our requisite legislation in place. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, this is the second or third time I think we've been looking at this whole question of trust services and corporate service providers and the need to modify the existing arrangements to ensure that they become compatible with the critical interests of trying to avoid or restrain, curtail any opportunities for money laundering and the financing of terrorism in Jamaica. So this is an order which will designate these two forms of services for the purposes of the Terrorism Prevention Act, so that the requirements of that act in relation to reporting, etc., will affect now these types of service providers. Clearly, this must have the support of the House, because we have been passing legislation whether it be primary or secondary legislation, for many years to try and tighten Jamaica's framework. One of the peculiarities of our arrangements is the fact that the Terrorism Prevention Act doesn't fall under the Ministry of National Security. I mean, logically, you'd have thought that legislation to do with fighting terrorism should come under your national security apparatus, but for some historical reasons, it falls within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. That is not a new arrangement. That has been the case for successive administrations, but it is rather unusual. Hence, this order is signed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, although it's addressing terrorism prevention. So, Madam Speaker, we have no objection to this. We understand the need for it, and therefore we support it. In a sense, one wonders if all this effort is somewhat futile, insofar as the whole edifice of legislation around establishing Jamaica as an international financial center, which started under the Bruce Golding administration with the establishment of the authority, JISTV, I think it's called, Jamaica International Financial Services Authority, but could not really get off the ground without passing a lot of legislation to facilitate Jamaica being able to provide a variety of financial services to international clients that wish to establish different forms of structures in this jurisdiction to handle their international business. Those things had to be put in place. So we have trust legislation that was passed to achieve that. We have partnership legislation that was passed to achieve that, several partnership bills. What is missing is the companies legislation. It was brought here. I think Minister Vaz was then in charge of it. I had reviewed it, made some comments, recommending some adjustments to him. I understand those were being taken on board, but it has stalled. We haven't seen it brought back here well over a year now. And until we have companies legislation that facilitates, for example, the migration of companies that are incorporated in other jurisdictions but want to move to Jamaica because they like the environment here, the economic environment here, and maybe the costs related to servicing their businesses here and so on. Until we have that, this JISTV concept is never going to get off the ground. I understand from the Minister of Finance that that legislation needs to go through a similar exercise as was done for the international financial service providers, which is the trust service and corporate service providers legislation, which was amended in the last quarter, I think, of last calendar year. Yeah, so that needs to happen for the companies bill as well. Yeah, the new companies bill. So that, not the domestic companies act, but the one that will support the JISTV. Yeah, it's called a Limited Companies Act or something. I don't remember what the international, I don't remember the name of the bill. But it is an interesting bill because it creates a new, the LLC structure here, and another bill had been developed when we were in government for the international companies. It had drawn, and JISTV has been a real mover and shaker in getting these things, but they had drawn on several different jurisdictions to provide different components to that bill. And I thought it was too complex, and it was very difficult to, it didn't have a cohesive feel to it. So I wasn't surprised when the decision was taken to proceed with another approach, which was the LLC approach. But we're still waiting on it. I don't know what the future of JISTV is. Most international financial centers, or many of them in small island states, really originated as a place for tax purposes. People would establish and entities there, whether it be trusts or companies or what have you. Cayman has made a big industry now out of being a hub for international financing transactions in the international for structured notes and private equity deals and bond issues and all sorts of things, and they have legal services to support that, which we have only in a very nascent form, but could develop further, especially when we're producing so many lawyers every year now. So I do hope that we find a business model for JISTV that is compatible with our revenue laws and the philosophy underpinning our revenue laws, and of course is compliant with the international philosophy against money laundering and the financing of terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. You can't move forward at all until you've ticked those boxes. But it's been a long time since the government has issued a policy statement around where it sees this JISTV platform going. What is the future for it? It's been, as I understand, a lot of dialogue and work has happened behind the scenes. I talked to people at JISTV. I know the direction they were hoping to go, but I'm not sure where it is. And I would really appreciate it, actually, if the government could make such a statement soon to the House, so we know whether they're still interested in it, and if so, what is the business case that supports it? What is the niche that we hope to take advantage of? How is it going to benefit Jamaica going forward? But this order that we're approving here now, because it's subject to affirmative resolution, the Senate approved it last week, Friday. This is really just part of the JISTV arrangements, which really haven't generated any kind of revenue for the government or business activity for the country so far, or if it has, it's very, very small. In the Senate, the point was made by I think it was Senator Peter Bunting, about the fact that the current arrangements for designating non-financial actors as being subject to the reporting and other requirements of anti-money laundering and so on, there was a gap because it didn't include real estate developers. And I think that's an important gap which the government needs to review quickly, because it is well known that there are opportunities for laundering money through real estate projects in the country. And we know from what's been happening in some of the municipal corporations that the enforcement of rules and so on around planning approval is not what it should be. There have been cases where the courts have had to intervene to stop developments that were proceeding rapidly in violation of the original approvals, stop them from going any further because interested residents in the community were seeing these things going up and had to take action. And we've seen collective petitioning by interested parties, citizens groups and so on, around the need for Jamaica to get to grips with this whole question of planning, urban planning, and ensuring that the anxiety to push growth is not at the expense of people being able to live in a civilized way without neighborhoods being utterly changed in terms of their character and the privacy rights of individual residents not being turned on end and so on. So in the course of all of this, the real estate development side of it needs to be looked at carefully, because it is a big gap in the framework. Dealers and developers are already covered, but real estate dealers are covered, but the developers are not. And so that is something we should really look at as a country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I rise to indicate my support for the order and just to respond to a question that was raised by the leader of the opposition about why this matter of the terrorism prevention designated reporting entity, trust and corporate service providers order falls under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and not under the Ministry of National Security, since it is a terrorism-related matter. Madam Speaker, there is a good explanation for that. The matter arises out of Jamaica's international obligations, and you would see the order makes reference to it arises out of Jamaica's international obligations, Madam Speaker, and there is an important distinction in respect of international obligations. There are some countries that are regarded as monist, where international law apply directly in their national law. And there are others like Jamaica, like the UK, referred to as dualist, where you have to incorporate the international law obligation in your national law. And in effect, you have to pass the law in order for that international law to apply locally. And this order is the passing of a law at the lower level in order for the international law obligation to apply. So in our arrangements, matters that arise under international obligations, the Foreign Ministry has responsibility, but of course areas will overlap, and other areas, other ministries, of course, will have interest in subject matters. But that is really the explanation for the bifurcation, as it were, because it arises in the international context, but it has to be legislated domestically for it to apply.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chang, you can conclude.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now let me thank the members for the support, and in particular opposition leader, who, on matters of this sort, it's crucial we maintain certain unity across the country. And of course, we were able to benefit from his quite vast knowledge in the area of trust and trust companies. So we appreciate that. But, Madam Speaker, the presence of this legislation not only is there to should be brought to the House, more quickly to ensure we can, in fact, begin to gain some benefit from going through the process and getting the authority up and running. It's, of course, it does require getting all these pieces of legislation together, and I think we have to maybe systematically look at how we get them in. We have discussing this over in other areas. The rather tedious process of getting requisite legislation, and in this case, not just meeting international obligations. But the truth is that money laundering is a challenge to our entire security process. Reference is made to real estate development in other areas, because currently significant amount of funding coming to this country, finance money, through the lot of scamming, which is advanced credit fraud activity. Enough to, and getting into the system, and that kind of money have a way of undermining the entire economic process. We therefore have to have in place robust legislation to begin to intercept this kind of activity, reduce them, and in fact get rid of it altogether. The Financial Investigation Division works in collaboration with MOCAN, the Police Division responsible, and has been increasing its efforts, and I expect that we'll see some results, because it is clear, if you, not just the multi-story apartments that sometimes that emerges in developments in Kingston, which raise other questions that have been raised elsewhere, but travel some section of Jamaica, the level of construction, even at this time, in fact, certainly during the year when we thought we had an economic decline. Now, we did have economic decline, but construction was going up significantly. They tell the cement sales went up in some places 20-25%, and you see huge investment going, because it's relatively easy to get involved in this kind of activity with cash, and many times without any legal transaction. It's got to see a $100 million house coming on captured land, for example. It has no interface with the legal process. You don't need to buy it through a lawyer. You don't, and goods and services are provided also cash, and it raises issues. And the security forces, security institutions are aware and are taking a closer look at these things. And I expect to see some results coming out of it during the course of this year, because between the Financial Investigative Division, which is housed in the Ministry of Finance appropriately for a number of reasons, but working collaboratively with the relevant the MOCA, and a section of the police, CTOC, which is involved in this kind of activity, we should be able to begin to identify and bring to book some of these operatives. And not only is it a question of advanced credit fraud, gangsters are involved in big extortion. It's no longer a kind of Friday evening walk and beg a lunch money. People are getting involved and extorting from contractors, business places, significant sums. And then the money goes into the system in all kind of adverse way. We have to find a way to deal with them. The legislation, of course, the NFI, we expect to bring early to the House aspects of it. But the House be aware, and I remind them, I've said this before, I won't delay much time on it, but there's an issue in court with the legal profession. I expect it will be sought out during the course of this year, because that's another piece of legislation that needs to be brought here. We will take steps to improve it as it is before we get there, but that will be necessary. And we'll be able to complete the suite of legislation that will allow Jamaica to participate fully in international financial operations. Madam Speaker, I now put the motion for affirmation by the House. Thank you. Please.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion of which the Minister gave notice earlier be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. The motion is approved. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is intended to complete the debate on the report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the motions for consideration of a proposal that the City Municipality of Portmore becomes the 15th parish of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, it's intended that the member from Southeast St. Catherine and the member from East Central St. Catherine will make their contributions. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Member from Southeast St. Catherine.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the motion for Portmore to be the 15th parish of Jamaica. I must say I'm privileged and honored to be selected by the Most Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister of Local Government to have served on the Joint Select Committee that reviewed this proposal. I'm also indeed grateful to have been elected to serve the great people.
The member is on his feet. Can't hear him at all.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm also indeed grateful, to have been elected to serve the great people of St. Catherine Southeastern, which falls within the area in question. We have had some robust discussion, Madam Speaker, and held 2 hybrid town hall meetings with the citizens of the great Portmore municipal city on the 22nd and the 29th of July 2021, contrary to what is said by my colleague member from South St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the chairman of the committee for steering of the ship and guiding us at times to the matter at hand. The Most Honourable Prime Minister and the Minister of Local Government made the right choice by selecting Dr. Andrew Wheatley to chair this committee. Sir Wheatley, thanks for your leadership and insight. Madam Speaker, Portmore is dear to me. I lived and schooled from the area and currently serve the area. Madam Speaker, it's no secret that Portmore is the largest dormitory community in the Caribbean with a wealth of human resources experts in any field you can think of. During 2020, Madam Speaker, I observed the lockdown that was placed on St. Catherine from 5 a.m. Wednesday, April 15th to 5 a.m. Wednesday, April 22nd. Madam Speaker, the entire country came to a halt because businesses in Clarendon, Kingston, and St. Andrew in particular could not operate because employees could not leave the vicinity of Portmore. Madam Speaker, it's time for the people of Portmore to get their own independence and run their own state of affairs. Madam Speaker, now is the time. Madam Speaker, I've heard the argument about why rushing Portmore parish status. Why is it that Portmore deserves to be a parish? My argument to those questions are, why not? Why not giving the people of Portmore the parish status that they deserve? I have had many discussions with my constituents and residents of Portmore, and for the most part, they want Portmore to be the first parish that we select as a people in this our 60th Jubilee year of our Lord Jesus Christ. I have heard the arguments, Madam Speaker, that before Portmore can become a parish, we need a market, a cemetery, a hospital, we need this and we need that. The reality is, Madam Speaker, Portmore does need a proper market so the soon-to-be parish can be more organized compared to what stands now all over the place. No doubt, a hospital is needed, and that is why the Most Honourable Prime Minister has committed Portmore as the next location for a hospital earmarked for St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, those amenities are indeed needed and are critical to the residents of Portmore, but their current absence does not prevent or present a legal impediment to Portmore becoming a parish. Those arguments were laid to rest by the technocrats when they made their presentation to the Joint Select Committee. We have many contributions from various organizations, majority of which stated that they have no issue with Portmore becoming the 15th parish. I would like to give the facts on one entity in particular, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF. Madam Speaker, contrary to what was said last week, the High Command of the JCF stated to the committee that they have no issue with Portmore becoming a parish. They are here to serve. However, Madam Speaker, they said that there will be changes in the organizational and management structure to policing. This, they said, would include the establishment of a new Portmore police division, which will adequately service the area in question. Madam Speaker, you are absent from the meeting. Madam Speaker, I leave this for your consideration. Currently, every councillor in Portmore must attend meetings at the St. Catherine Municipal Council. However, the St. Catherine Municipal Councillors have no need to attend meetings at the Portmore Municipal Council. I must add, Madam Speaker, if a councillor failed to attend meeting at the St. Catherine Municipal Council, they would not be compensated with their salaries. Madam Speaker, I will go on a little further to say that the residents of Caribbean Estate, which is over 1,000 houses, which falls in the division of Greater Portmore North, can only vote for the councillor of Portmore, but cannot vote for the mayor of Portmore. Madam Speaker, this is an untidy situation and needs to be addressed now. Madam Speaker, I know that there are some concerns about the proposed boundaries for the parish of Portmore. However, I'm confident that those concerns will be addressed as time progresses. Madam Speaker, it would be in the country's best interest for Portmore to be the 15th parish of Jamaica. We have the competencies and can manage our own affairs as a parish. We are destined, Madam Speaker, given the significant investment, to be the smart parish of Jamaica. Also, Madam Speaker, I could not take my seat unless I request from the power that be to consider the area of Portmore Town Centre to be the capital of the parish of Portmore. I look forward to seeing Portmore the Sunshine City, the 15th parish of Portmore, and I encourage my colleagues to vote for this motion. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
If it so pleases you, Madam Speaker, I wish to make my contribution to the discussions at hand regarding making Portmore the 15th parish in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, as we celebrate our 60th year, as we put plans together to celebrate this, our Diamond Jubilee, one such plan that the government of Jamaica has in place is that of making Portmore, the Sunshine City, the 15th parish of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, in this, the 21st century, the last time a parish was created in Jamaica was in the late 1800s. We owe it to the people of Portmore. We owe it to the residents of all Jamaica as we put plans in place not only to become a republic, but to also show the rest of the world that we are capable of expanding the boundaries of municipal corporations by turning them into parishes in the 21st century. Madam Speaker, I ask myself, why is it that anyone would oppose the formation of Portmore as the 15th parish? Madam Speaker, I have been left with but one conclusion, that the Parliament of Jamaica could only be divided on such an important matter on the grounds of politics. Madam Speaker, it is time we stop playing politics with the lives of the people of Jamaica, and in particular with the residents of Portmore. Madam Speaker, in 2003, Madam Speaker, long before 2022, discussions were had by the late former Mayor George Lee and others who spoke of Portmore becoming a parish. The only difference, Madam Speaker, in 2022 is that the discussions are now being chaired by members of the Jamaica Labour Party and the Prime Minister of Andrew Holness. That is the sole difference, my lady. My lady, in discussing whether Portmore will become a parish, it is important that we note that the parish of Portmore will not be stuck in the pipeline of neglect and poverty, Madam Speaker. We will proceed. Madam Speaker, Portmore, while small in comparison to some parishes, is larger than at least 8 other parishes. Portmore, while small in terms of size, my lady, is still larger than several other parishes when one considers the numbers of residents as well. My lady, as has been said in previous discussions, members from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Labour and Social Services, my lady, all have indicated that there are no set requirements that must be in place before a parish can be created. My lady, we have already given the commitment as a government that the hospital will be built in Portmore. We have seen, my lady, and I have, my lady, when one speaks of infrastructure development, my lady, I can speak personally to the plans in place to develop the roads and highways in Portmore. Just last month, I met with Mr. Downer and Mr. Hunter and the team at the NWA. And my lady, we discussed the dualization of Grange Lane, which is scheduled to commence in March 2022 and completed in December 2022. We discussed the new access to Portmore from the Mandela Highway and the dualization of a part of the Municipal Boulevard by Dyke Road to Grange Lane. My lady, that will also include bridges being constructed over the Rio Cobre and Dyke Road as a wonderful state-of-the-art overpass to enter the parish of Portmore. This is set to commence in June 2022, Phase 1. Phase 2 set to commence in September 2022. Madam Speaker, we also discussed the dualization of Brayton Road and part of the Hellshire Main Road leading from Niagara Heads to East Mid Street. This is scheduled to commence May 2022 and completed in September 2023. And, my lady, discussions are also underway to discuss the dualization of the Brayton Parkway, in particular as more and more development comes to Portmore. So, my lady, not only are we planning to make Portmore the 15th parish, the requisite infrastructure is also being discussed to make Portmore the epicenter of St. Catherine. My lady, the people of Portmore want a parish status. We've had several consultations. In fact, my lady, all of the consultations showed a majority view that Portmore should become a parish. My lady, there were less than 5 distinct groups who opposed Portmore becoming a parish, with more than 20 distinct groups indicating definitively that we must become a parish. Consultations were held by way of Zoom, this being the age of technology. And again, my lady, I found it fitting that we spoke and did consultations via Zoom, more so as the Prime Minister himself has indicated that Portmore will become a smart city, a city of technology. And so our residents in Portmore, they logged on to the prosperity. They logged on to the message of moving Portmore forward, and they gave their opinions via Zoom, my lady. Persons wrote several articles in the newspaper. Persons submitted detailed emails and reports. We had persons from NEPA, NWA, all the various ministries present, and not one of them objected or showed any reason why Portmore should not become a parish. In fact, my lady, my sole disappointment in sitting on the committee was that the discussion to move Portmore along the lines of becoming a parish came from one set of individuals who sit in either in the Senate or the House of Representatives representing the opposition, my lady. And it is for that reason why I indicate that we must not delay the prosperity and progress of Portmore. Portmore must not be stuck. The parish of Portmore, my lady, must not be stuck in the pipeline of neglect and poverty. We move on with the plans and we welcome it. And as a Member of Parliament who sits in Portmore, my lady, I say thank you to all persons who contributed to the discussions in the consultation phase. I want to thank our esteemed chairman as well, Member of Parliament Dr. Andrew Wheatley, and all our colleagues, including those from the opposition who lent their voices in the consultation period. But, my lady, the majority has spoken. We have spoken quite clearly with one voice, and that voice is that Portmore, as we celebrate this, our Diamond Jubilee, this the 60th year of our independence, that Portmore, and in particular the municipality of Portmore, will be freed from the shackles of the wider St. Catherine, and Portmore must get that complete autonomous status of becoming the 15th parish in Jamaica. I rest my lady.
Bless you. Why, thank you, Dr. Wheatley. I appreciate it. Good, sir. Cheers.
Madam Speaker, let me use this opportunity to again thank the members of the Joint Select Committee that sat to examine the proposal of establishing Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish. I must also thank, Madam Speaker, the persons who participated in the process. We had a number of government agencies and ministries. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, I am very pleased that we exhausted the whole process of consultation. In 1867, when the current 14 parishes were established, it was done by a simple process by the then House of Assembly of demarcating areas within Jamaica as parishes and at the same time marking out boundaries for parish capitals. That was pre-independence, Madam Speaker. We as an independent nation, for the first time, have the opportunity of establishing a parish. In 1867, Madam Speaker, Jamaica's population was around 95,000, mostly slaves. Today, we are looking at an area that is being proposed as Jamaica's 15th parish, with over 200,000 persons living within that area. Madam Speaker, we are going to celebrate 60 years of independence this year. It is only fitting, Madam Speaker, that we should emancipate the people or persons living within Portmore. Give them full autonomy, Madam Speaker, to make decisions pertinent to themselves and the governance of that area. Madam Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to remind this House of what actually took place during those deliberations. In fact, Madam Speaker, we thought it best that we should do whatever possible despite the pandemic to ensure that we got as much input from persons living within Portmore, outside of Portmore, whether you live within Jamaica or outside of Jamaica. And Madam Speaker, we extended on a number of occasions the deadline for submissions. We utilized the available technology to ensure that we had maximum participation. And Madam Speaker, the general consensus, after exhausting all the opportunities, is that Portmore should be Jamaica's 15th parish. Madam Speaker, during the process, a number of issues were raised. And I must say that members of the committee recognize that a number of these issues are real important issues, notwithstanding the fact that it does not prevent us from establishing Portmore as a 15th parish, but they are real concerns. The matter of infrastructure was brought to the fore. In fact, Madam Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to indicate that it is not because of us considering parish status for Portmore that we are improving the infrastructure. In fact, Madam Speaker, the process had started some time ago. When you look at the dualization of the Port-Endis Road, and in fact that already in the pipeline, the continuation of that dualization all the way along Brighton Boulevard up to Elshire was already in train. But Madam Speaker, we recognize that as a new parish and as a responsible government, that we have to do more than that, Madam Speaker. In fact, the whole matter of addressing congestion in Portmore was already being addressed. The National Work Agency came and gave us a report that highlighted the programs that are in place and programs that have already started that will improve the traffic congestion in Portmore. And so, Madam Speaker, the dualization of the George Lee Boulevard, the areas as outlined by the member from East Central St. Catherine, along Grange Lane, the entrance into Portmore in the vicinity of Caymanas, the dualization of what we call I-95, those of us who are familiar with Portmore, or more officially called Portmore Boulevard, will also be dualized. Infrastructure, Madam Speaker, as it relates to providing adequate health care facility, is a real concern, notwithstanding, again, Madam Speaker, the fact that it is not a prerequisite for parish status. But we, being the caring government we are, Madam Speaker, made a commitment to establish the next hospital that is being planned for St. Catherine that it be placed in the new parish of Portmore. That was a commitment given by the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, and that is a commitment that will be carried through. Madam Speaker, you know, I'm sure that persons in Portmore, the different members of Parliament and councils will want the parish capital to be in their jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, it is not a new feature that the entire parish be classified as the capital. Kingston is the perfect example, Madam Speaker, and I believe that all three members of Parliament and the councillors in Portmore will agree with me that it's best for us to follow the path of Kingston to ensure that we don't have any contention that, you know, the parish of Portmore should be Portmore. And in fact, Madam Speaker, the mayor of Portmore, I'm sure, whether it will be a new mayor for Portmore, which more than likely it will be the case, that that person would rather have responsibility, Madam Speaker, just not only for a small area within the jurisdiction, but the entire Portmore, Madam Speaker. Seeing that, it's the first time in Jamaica's history, or the first jurisdiction where all the residents can vote for a mayor. And it is only appropriate that, seeing that all the citizens within Portmore being able to vote for that mayor, that mayor has responsibility for all the persons living within that jurisdiction as well, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, there are some arguments out there, mostly from the opposition, that Portmore should not be a parish. But I believe the real question is, why not? Why not Portmore becoming Jamaica's 15th parish? The current Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, last year, as part of the manifesto that, for the first time, elected 2 JLP, Jamaica Labour Party members of Parliament in Portmore. Madam Speaker, it is only fitting that we complete the process and not only give lip service, Madam Speaker, but to deliver on a commitment. You know, Madam Speaker, just look at the result over there in Portmore. Madam Speaker, it is clear that this government was given the mandate by the people of Portmore to establish Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish. Madam Speaker, we cannot hide from the truth. We cannot hide from the truth, Madam Speaker. Prior to the elections of 2020, it was reversed, where the other side had 2 constituencies. Now it is reversed, where the Jamaica Labour Party government is in control of 2 of the 3 constituencies in Portmore. Madam Speaker, if you looked at the results from a divisional perspective, Madam Speaker, the current status quo would have been totally demolished because only 3 of the 12 divisions the PMP was able to retain. Madam Speaker, if that is not a clear mandate for us to establish Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish, what else? And it's only sad, Madam Speaker, that my good friend, the Member of Parliament from South St. Catherine, my Member of Parliament,
Disappointed.
is not listening, Madam Speaker, to the people of Portmore. It is very sad. But we are going to forgive him, Madam Speaker. We are going to forgive him because, Madam Speaker, we are going to forgive the member, Madam Speaker. We are going to forgive him. I will not vote for you, but I'm going to forgive you for this mistake. Madam Speaker, Portmore is on the cusp of greatness. Portmore, Madam Speaker, will become Jamaica's 15th parish, but Madam Speaker, it is going to be the first smart city in this region. Madam Speaker, you know, over the last couple of years, we have seen a significant investment in BPOs in Portmore. In fact, it was at the opening of a BPO that the Prime Minister indicated that Portmore will soon have its own hospital, Madam Speaker. But I believe that Portmore has that inherent capacity to be more than just a center for BPOs. Madam Speaker, we must ensure that we move beyond that and put in place value-added services. We need, Madam Speaker, to unleash the innovative capacity of the people of Portmore. Madam Speaker, we need to create employment opportunities for the people of Portmore, Madam Speaker. Not by them being employed by someone else, but they being their own employers. And that, Madam Speaker, is the gist of it becoming a smart parish. Madam Speaker, we need to look at e-waste in Portmore. We are forced, Madam Speaker, by the pandemic to fast-track the whole process of persons using technology to conduct work. Quite a number of public sector workers and persons in the private sector worked from home during the pandemic, Madam Speaker. I believe that once we put in place appropriate KPIs, we can ensure that work is being done. We must, though, Madam Speaker, implore the telecommunications company to ensure that proper infrastructure is in place and that they maintain infrastructure, Madam Speaker. We cannot want to stimulate innovation and you cannot, Madam Speaker, get proper connectivity. So as a government, we have a responsibility as well. And I'm sure that the minister with responsibility will ensure that the telcos are held accountable and that we create that infrastructure, Madam Speaker, that will facilitate innovation. Madam Speaker, I can go on and on, but there's no need, Madam Speaker, to belabor the point because it is a given. The member from South St. Catherine recognized that he made an error by opposing. And as such, Madam Speaker, I am sure the member in due time will recant. He will sing a Sankey and find his way home. Again, Madam Speaker, let me thank all those who participated in the process at the committee level and also those persons that made presentations and also made submissions. Madam Speaker, the concluding statement from that report, Madam Speaker, spoke to the agreement or the general consensus by the majority that Portmore should be named Jamaica's 15th parish. And so, Madam Speaker, I ask that this report be accepted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member Wheatley. The question, therefore, before the House is that the motion be approved. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The motion is approved. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the normal procedure that follows such a resolution being accepted by this Honourable House is that it then be conveyed to the Executive for appropriate action. And I think that the Minister of Local Government, in whose portfolio area this matter would fall, has taken note of the outcome of this Honourable House today and will no doubt make the appropriate steps when the matter is put before the Executive. Madam Speaker, I now beg for a recommittal of the notices of motions given orally to allow me to deal with a matter of routine importance.
The question before the House that there's a recommittal of the item notices of motions given orally. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move. Be it resolved, in reference to the sessional select, joint select and select committees which are appointed in the current session of Parliament, and where these committees have not completed their deliberations, that in the new session of Parliament, this Honourable House be empowered to enable these committees to proceed with the issues referred to them from the stage reached before prorogation. Be it also further resolved, Madam Speaker, that the composition of all these committees remain unchanged, except, where necessary, by further motion taken and approved by this Honourable House. And be it further resolved, with reference to matters identified below, which are included in the order of business in this session of Parliament, but for which deliberations have not been completed, that in the new session of Parliament, the House be empowered to proceed with them from the stage reached before prorogation. 1. The Partnership General Forms Regulation 2022 Resolution. 2. The Partnership Limited Forms Regulations 2022 Resolution. 3. The Road Traffic Resolutions 2022. 4. The Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 Resolution. 5th, the Jamaica Teaching Council Act 2022. 6. The Jamaica Development Bank Repeal Act 2022. Private members' motion numbers 1 through 17. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
We now return, House Leader, to the item on the agenda, public business. Public business.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that, Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier. But indeed, Madam Speaker, to indicate that in pointing out the motions to be carried over, that the sequence that I indicated would have been broken because motion number 11 and 15 would not be carried over into the next session. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I wish at this stage to thank this Honourable House, beginning, of course, with you, Madam Speaker, for the able way and the astute way. And indeed, I felt like a Portia has come to judgment when you took over as Speaker and the manner in which you have carried out your responsibilities. The past year, Madam Speaker, has been, I think, a robust one for this Parliament. And while commending you and the Clerk of the House, our new clerk, and in this session, we had the good fortunes of indeed recognizing Ms. Curtis as our new clerk, succeeding our former clerk, who we commended for the great work that she did during her tenure. Her staff and the team of this Honourable House, the manner in which they acquitted themselves and the essence of this kind of commitment to duty was a shining example, I think, of public servants in our country, and we want to commend all of you and thank you very much. Madam Speaker, we spoke of how robust the activity for the year has been, and I'm very pleased to report that we had 56 sessions of Parliament this year. And we had an attendance record of 77.3%, which records among the highest attendance that we have had over time. Madam Speaker, we passed 26 bills, and we had 182 committee meetings of joint select and regular select committees. Madam Speaker, we have in the process had occasions to commend the Hansard team and to recognize that they have in fact said to us that the robustness of activities in the House has put them under stress to deliver their report. And I want to tell them that we have taken note of this and technology is on its way to assist them, because we are advancing enabling a new technology which will enable them to capture by voice all the deliberations of this House and to be recorded and reproduced almost simultaneously. Madam Speaker, we close therefore this session recognizing that we gave full opportunity, not just for the appropriations budget to be fully examined, clause by clause, line by line, but also for a robust debate which ensued on both sides of this House. And then, Madam Speaker, we went into the sectoral debate. And finally, we brought a new dimension to the extent to which members, regular, ordinary members of this Honourable House, to not just represent their constituencies in the traditional sense of banging on the desk and saying aye, but to be able to present the case of their constituency for the attention of the executive to include in the budget considerations the things that are critical and important to the people who have sent them to this Honourable House. And I think that it is a wonderful opportunity that we didn't miss, that over 30-odd members actually spoke and made an opportunity known that the people who sent them here are being represented. Madam Speaker, as we close this session, I'd like to indicate that on February 7, 2022, we will prorogue this Honorable House. And you know, many times the pronunciation and people miss the first R and end up saying prorogue. It is actually prorogue. This Honorable House on the 7th day of February 2022. And then, Madam Speaker, we will have the ceremonial opening of this Honorable House on February 10, 2022 at 11 a.m. when the throne speech will be presented by the Governor General. Just by way of some housekeeping matters, Madam Speaker, the seating arrangements will follow the pattern of last year. As you know, we are still in the pandemic and the protocols in relation to social distance in the chamber is still to be maintained. We regret that the number of members who will be able to participate directly in this opening will again be constrained by these considerations, and we are happy that members have responded well so that we will be able to comport with the requirements of the protocols. We also have to reduce the invitations that go to the wider public, particularly some of the protocols listed individuals who we normally would have invited, and we have to ask that they now stay and enjoy the proceedings of the House by virtual means. As a result, we will be streaming live the activities of the opening, and as usual, our media presence will be felt not just here in Jamaica, but overseas as well. So in that context, Madam Speaker, I would indicate that the Standing Finance Committee of the House will then meet on March 1, 2022, following the interregnum of the estimates of expenditure going to be reviewed by the Auditor General. And then on Tuesday the 3rd, we will continue Standing Finance, and possibly Friday, I hope not. We can complete the work in 2 days, I'm sure. And if we do, then all will be well, as it always be at the end. And then the final position is that our debate, the budget debate, will begin on March 8th, usually opened by our Minister of Finance, and continues Thursday, March 10, and then Tuesday, March 15, Thursday, March 17, and we close on Tuesday, the 22nd, so that the bill can then go to the upper house to be debated and concluded and to get the assent of the Governor General in time for the constitutional start of the fiscal year, April 1, 2022. Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for the day, and I therefore ask that you adjourn this Honourable House, sine die.
Thank you very much, House Leader. I want to thank you for your very kind words this afternoon, and of course it would be remiss of me to accept these and not to thank and recognize the support and assistance of the Clerk to the Houses of Parliament and her staff. I want to say that I could not achieve what we have achieved without their sterling support, always. And I also want to thank the Leader of Opposition Business for his cooperation that was given to me during these sittings. And of course, House Leader, I thank you, we thank you most of all for your very able leadership as House Leader, and also your very capable deputy who has deputized on more than several occasions, on countless occasions. And we want to assure you that in your absence, she has done a superb job, as excellent a job as you would have done. And your deputy, and they say those closest to you, you leave for last. And I want this afternoon also to recognize the Deputy Speaker of the House, Mrs. Holness, who is as capable as I am, and who is here and always handles the business of the House in the way it ought to be. And I thank her very much for all. And members, I want to thank you also for your cooperation and to urge you, I really want to urge you that as part of her whole approach to the business of governance, that the Parliament must and will start at 2 p.m. whenever we sit again. So I'm telling you, I'm going to urge the ministers when they come with statements to come with a copy of their statements so that the opposition can be seized of what is said, and therefore they will be in a position to ask questions relevant to what you have said. Don't come and say they're coming 2 minutes and half an hour into the presentation. There's nothing. That's not good enough. I want to urge you and really ask us all as members of Parliament to be here promptly at 2 p.m. Thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Far be it from me to keep this House too much longer, but I wanted on behalf of the opposition to also express our gratitude and appreciation for the work that has been done, for the kind of bipartisanship that we have shown more often than not, for the excellent support more often than not. Don't force me. I also want to thank the Clerk of the House and the staff here at the Houses of Parliament for the kind of support that they have given to us in making sure that we can do the job that we have been tasked with doing here. I also want to say that 77% is not really very good in terms of, no, it's not. No, it's mediocre. It's better than where we have been. But we should not settle. Yes, but we should not settle. I believe that our task really is to come here and represent the people of Jamaica and to take care of the business. And so we should really have more than that. And I'm not casting blame either way. I'm talking about the. No. I'm saying all of us that are here as members need to do better. And it's something that I think we also have to learn to do as well. Not every criticism is a critique meant at you. It is at us. And we need to also remember that. I'm hoping that as we contemplate the prorogation of Parliament and look forward to the new session, that we really seek to lift the bar in all things, even on top of the strides we have made and improvement that we have seen, in particular in terms of starting on time, that will maintain. That we will continue to lift that bar and to strive for even further. I'm looking forward to the participation of all members as we actually move forward to our 60th year as a country, and that we will show in how we interact with one another and carry out the people's business that we too are maturing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that said, this House is now adjourned. Sine die. House.
Jamaica, home of the resilient.